Everybody's here now.
Good evening, everyone. At this time, I'd like to call to order the July meeting of the Rhode Island City Plan Commission. The first order of business is approval of minutes of the regular meeting of June 6th, 2023. Commissioner Frias.
Hello. I guess my microphone's not working. I'm sorry, I couldn't see the light. Just a few edits to the minutes, January 6th, clarifications. One of them is basically to make it clear that I was talking about the solar amendment of 2017 and regarding other goals in the comprehensive plan. The other amendment down this bottom of page 5 is explaining exactly what I meant by Judge Leach's decision and the expert testimony we received in that. The other edits on pages 5 through 6 is basically to make it clear that I was talking about the zoning ordinance at the time of the application and that I didn't mention anything about nuances, so I crossed out that section. And lastly, on the beginning of page 7, the motion, as I looked at the transcript, was to amend the motion to include his reasons for denial, which were mine, and all the other things. I wanted to make clear that it also, the denial was included my reasons. So with that, those are my amendments to the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other changes, questions, amendments? Seeing none, I will accept a motion to accept the minutes as with the changes suggested by Commissioner Frias. Motion made by Commissioner Zedella, seconded by Commissioner Mancini to approve as amended. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Under ordinances, we have one ordinance this evening for 2301, ordinance and amendment of Chapter 17 of the Code of the City of Cranston entitled Zoning.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. This is Alex Berardo, planning technician, and this is the staff presentation for ordinance number 4-23-01, a rezone of Zero Bedson Road. The applicant, Lake Street Realty LLC, is proposing to change the zoning district of the subject parcel, which is comprised of Assessor's Plat 4, lots 2606 through 9, from C5 to C5 with commercial flex space overlay. The zoning map shows a band of C5 zoned parcels, including the subject parcel, framing both sides of Elmwood Avenue. Those are the parcels in red. Within a 400-foot radius, we also find a large swath of M2 zoned land to the west, that's purple, and the near edge of an A6 zone neighborhood in yellow. The future land use map diverges somewhat from existing zoning. The subject parcel and all others on the western side of Elmwood Avenue are designated special redevelopment area. The comp plan calls this area the Elmwood Wellington Industrial Corridor. On the eastern side of Elmwood, the future land use map more or less reinforces the existing zoning conditions with highway/commercial services along Elmwood, that's red, and single family residential 7.26 to 3.64 units per acre in the neighborhood, which is yellow. Here's a close-up aerial view of the subject parcel, whose 4 constituent lots are outlined in the thin orange line. The lots are currently unimproved and host outdoor storage of construction materials and various equipment. Note that the parcel does have frontage on Elmwood Avenue as well as Bedson Road, which is on the north. And it is 20,765 square feet in size. Here we have a 3D aerial view. This is facing southwest and it gives us an overview of the Elmwood Wellington Industrial Corridor Special Redevelopment Area. And now we have two street views. The first is taken from Elmwood Avenue and the second is taken from Bedson Road. And with that, we can turn to the planning analysis. So the applicant seeks to establish a commercial flex space overlay for the subject parcel. This zone change request repurposed language that was originally written for the Plainfield Pike Commercial Flex Space Ordinance. And that was the one that you guys heard in April when the meeting was at the at Central Library. It uses that language as a template. Staff believes that the mix of permitted activities contemplated in this ordinance would afford the applicant adequate flexibility to pursue a range of uses that are, on the one hand, traditionally found in a commercial condo, commercial flex space setting, yet on the other hand, are not more intensive than many uses currently allowed by right in the C5 zone in Cranston. And for example, some of those would include supermarket, banquet facility, commercial recreation, nightclub, large-scale retail, things like that. The proposed ordinance also defines prohibited activities as well as related restrictions and requirements to ensure that the development of a commercial flex space facility will not create undue nuisances to abutting properties or even the occupants of other units within a shared facility. And I'd also, just for clarity, note there are no development plans associated with this proposal at this point in time. And should development plans be submitted in the future, those are going to be in the purview of the Development Plan Review Committee. And the ordinance itself has language that discusses the role that the DPRC would play in some greater detail. So now we have the required findings. There is first the one that is consistency with the comp plan. So the language I have there is the proposal is consistent with multiple economic development goals and policies contained within the comprehensive plan. And I listed a few that were relevant and provided the citations down there. And the subject parcel's future land use map designation is special redevelopment area. For these reasons, ordinance number 4-23-01 is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. The second finding has to do with zoning, and it is to the extent that any development of the subject property will be required to comply with all aspects of the zoning ordinance, including development plan review, and will be required to comply with City of Cranston subdivision and land development regulations. Staff finds that the proposed rezone will adequately address the appropriate purposes detailed in section 17.04.010, and therefore finds the ordinance to be consistent with the general purposes of zoning. And to read through the recommendation, due to the findings that the rezone from C5 to C5 with commercial flex space overlay is consistent with the comp plan and with the purposes of zoning as detailed in the section of code I just cited, seeks a mix of activities that are similar to but not more intensive than other heavy commercial / industrial uses that are already allowed in the C5 zone, and would subject associated development proposals to the review of the Development Plan Review Committee. Staff recommends the Plan Commission send a positive recommendation on ordinance number 4-23-01 to the City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Barato. Are there any questions from members of the commission? Seeing none, any member of the public wish to be heard on this matter? Okay, seeing none, I will
Mike,
accept.
Chairman, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, since we're doing hybrid meeting, that there could be people online who would want to make some comment. I know we haven't done this in a while, so.
That's right. This is our first meeting where we have an online audience. If there is anybody who is tuned into this meeting online and wishes to ask a question or make a comment, please indicate by raising your hand.
There is no public comment.
Okay, how could we tell if there was?
The
Would it
public
be
would
a-
have to raise their hand. There'd be a notification in the Zoom there would be an icon next to the member of the public, which is on screen right now.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, with no comment, I will accept a motion to close public comment on this matter. Motion made by Commissioner Coop, seconded by Commissioner Exter. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Public comment is closed. Any further discussion on the matter? In that case, I will accept a motion from the floor. Commissioner Zadelis moves a positive recommendation to the council. Seconded by Commissioner Coop. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is approved. Subdivisions and land developments. First item on the docket is Sharp Drive Solar. This is a public informational meeting for a master plan.
Good evening. I'm Gregory Gerton, Senior Planner with the Cranston Planning Department. I'm going to be speaking to staff's memo and recommendation for Sharp Drive Solar. The parcel is located, as you can see on the map, in the southeastern or south central portion of the city of Cranston. The current zone of the parcel is M2, general industry. The future land use map designation is open space. The applicant has proposed a 0.4 megawatt solar photovoltaic system on an already disturbed 2.4 acres located within and fully contained within a 50-acre site. So here is just a map showing the zoning designation of the parcel and the surrounding parcels in Cranston. Predominantly industrial. Future land use map designation, as was stated, open space, predominantly surrounded by industrial. Here's an aerial view of the subject parcel. Just note that within the entirety of the parcel that we're referring to here, the actual development is only occurring right here in this little pocket off to the side here. This is the 2.4 acres of previously disturbed site. Here's just a snippet of the site plan. From what I understand, the applicant has a pretty lengthy presentation that they're going to be providing you all with far more detail on the site plan. So I'm not going to belabor this or much of my presentation as it is. Here's just a close-up of the limit of disturbance where the panels are actually going to be located within that dashed area. So the subject parcel is located in the Howard neighborhood of Cranston. It's situated off Ross Simmons Drive and located along the Patuxent River. The parcel is located within a 100-year FEMA flood zone. However, nearly all the proposed disturbance is located outside of the FEMA flood zone itself. The solar development is located within FEMA flood zone AE, which is 1% annual chance of flood, 100-year flood zone, and FEMA zone X, which is a 0.2% annual chance of flood with minimal flood hazard. It's anticipated that the Rhode Island DEM wetlands approval will come as a part of the preliminary plan submission. And staff has added this to the conditions of approval to be enclosed in the master plan decision as such. And again, all proposed disturbance, the 2.4 acres contained within the 50-acre property is located within an already existing disturbed area on the site. The comprehensive plan future land use map calls for open space at this location, whereas current zoning is designated as M2 general industry. Staff does acknowledge this inconsistency, but felt that the proposal has addressed the issue of inconsistency in a few ways. All of the proposed development on this parcel is located within already disturbed area of the site, surrounded by open space. The owner of the property is the Patuxent River Authority, whose mission is to protect and improve Rhode Island's Patuxent River and its watershed. And the intention of the nonprofit is to utilize the funds generated via the lease agreement with Sharp Drive LLC to offset the expenses of their headquarters specifically, by which the ownership and operation of the headquarters is a requirement of Rhode Island general law. And this offsetting of the expenses aids the nonprofit in preserving and protecting the 100 acres of land within the Patuxent River watershed, and more specifically, the remainder of the 50 acres of undeveloped land located on the parcel. The findings are as such. The proposed major land development has satisfactorily addressed the issues where there may be some inconsistencies with the comprehensive plan. Staff found that the proposed master plan application is in compliance with the municipality's zoning ordinance. The project will be subject to all state and local regulations pertaining to environmental impacts and wetlands. The Rhode Island DEM's natural heritage map shows that there are known rare species located on the full site, and the applicant has stated that they'll be coordinating with a wetland biologist during the design process to ensure the prevention of any impact on the sensitive species located in the subject parcel. The proposed development will not result in the creation of individual lots with such physical constraints to development that building on those lots according to pertinent regulations and building standards will be impracticable. And the properties in question have adequate permanent physical access to Sharp Drive. So staff finds that this proposal is consistent with the standards for required findings of facts set forth in Rhode Island general law, as well as with the City of Cranston subdivision and land development regulations. Staff therefore recommends a positive recommendation to the Plan Commission, but with subject to the conditions denoted below, that the applicant shall obtain all necessary approvals from outside state agencies, including wetland edge verification from Rhode Island DEM prior to preliminary plan submission, and the applicant will submit a Class 1 survey prior to development plan review, preliminary plan submission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Girton. Is the applicant here this evening?
Good evening, Chairman Smith, members of the Planning Commission. For the record, my name is Robert Murray, attorney with the firm of Taft and McSally, located at 21 Garden City Drive in Cranston. And as many of you may know already, I represent Revity Energy LLC, and in this case, Sharp Solar LLC, the applicant of the major land development application before you. Greg has done a nice job of a general overview. He did say we had a lengthy presentation. I don't want to characterize it there. Hopefully it'll be an efficient presentation, but thorough enough to give you all the information necessary to support the staff's recommendation for a positive approval of this application. I'm going to make some introductory remarks, but let me just introduce some of the people that we have with you this evening. First, from Revity Energy and Sharp Solar LLC is the managing director, Ralph Palumbo, and my legal counsel from the entities, Mr. Nicholas Nybo and Kyle Palumbo, both work internally at Revity Energy. You're going to hear tonight, besides me, from Jenna Shea of DePreet Engineering, a project manager, and she is overseeing the work for this project. We've also invited this evening Scott Rabideau from Natural Resource Services, who is a well-respected and well-known wetlands biologist in the state. He is very familiar with this site in the Patuxent River corridor and will offer testimony to you concerning this application. Just by way of introduction, let me just say this, as Greg said, the subject property is a portion of lot 47 on Assessors Plat 13. It's about a 50-acre site that is owned by the Patuxent River Authority. The area that we're proposing the solar panels for is already a disturbed site and will comprise about 2.4 acres of the 50 acres owned by the Patuxent River Authority. They actually own the adjoining lot 70, Assessors lot 75 that runs north and south along the Warwick, city of Warwick border. My client has entered into a lease agreement with the Patuxent River Authority to develop this already developed, to further redevelop the already developed portion of lot 47. And we've provided to the staff and the public a copy of the initial lease with Revity Energy and the assignment of that lease to Sharp Solar LLC. Just by way of background, the Patuxent River Authority, for those who don't know, is a quasi-public corporation created initially by an act of the General Assembly in 1972. It was codified in the Rhode Island General Laws under Chapter 46-24. And that chapter of the General Laws sets forth the creation of the entity, its membership, its powers, and its responsibilities. The subject parcel that's part of this application tonight, the 50-acre site was acquired by the Patuxent River Authority in 2003 from the Rhode Island Economic Development Corporation, which, as some of you may know, was the successor to the Howard Development Corporation, which developed the Howard Industrial Park. And so this site is at the easterly side of the Howard Industrial Park at the end of Ross Simons Drive. In the deed that conveyed the site to the Patuxent River Authority, I want to emphasize that there are no restrictions in the deed. There's no limiting language as to only allowing conservation purposes on the site. There is no prohibition of this particular use, the solar facility. And it was a standard transaction between the state corporation and the Patuxent River Authority. Within the powers of the Patuxent River Authority under state law, they have the authority to hold, lease, sell property. It's certainly within their province to do that. In fact, several years ago, a portion of this parcel was conveyed to an abutter, about a half acre of the site. I want to say it was McLaughlin and Moran, but the entity was Golden Ale Realty, I think. But so they, in the routine of their operation and ownership, they do have the power to manage and take care of their property and do with it as allowed under their powers. I want to emphasize tonight is the master plan. Everybody on the commission understands that this is a conceptual approval. It's the first, after pre-application, is the first step in the major land development process. Once we receive master plan approval, we will then proceed forward with obtaining our necessary outside permits, principally that being the approval from the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. We would then proceed to the Development Plan Review Committee, which is for the members of the public, is a technical review process where notice is sent to neighbors. Various city departments will review a higher generation of engineering plans than what's before you this evening. And if we are successful with the Development Plan Review approval, we would then come back to you for a preliminary approval, again, with notice to the required radius and an opportunity for the public to be heard. And ultimately, the last step in the major land development process, as you know, is final plan approval. This is probably the first solar array project that this commission has reviewed under the revised ordinance and new regulations for solar energy systems since codified and modified by the city council. Although it's small in nature compared to some of the other projects this commission has reviewed, it is considered a major land development under the solar ordinance. I want to emphasize as a principal use, it is allowed in both the M1 and M2 zone by right, but does require us to follow the steps that I outlined. I'm going to talk more about the ordinance after, but we can meet the requirements of the ordinance, and I will talk a little bit more about that. I want to note that in addition to our application and site plan and narrative from Dupree Engineering, in the other documents that I mentioned, I did provide a copy of an environmental land use restriction, which is common when property owners, not just the Patuxent River Authority, are in ownership of land that has been contaminated. For those of you, and Jenna is going to talk about this, the landfill nearby, there was some contamination in the soils, and for that reason, the Patuxent River Authority imposed, with the cooperation and direction of the Department of Environmental Management, a land use restriction, which does put certain restrictions on both assessors lot 47 and lot 75. In short, those restrictions say that there can't be any residential use on lot 47, that none of the groundwater under lot 47 can be utilized, and that if there are any enclosed structures, they're required to have a proper venting system. Those are the only restrictions in the environmental land use restriction. It does not restrict any other uses, and it certainly does not restrict the ability to erect a solar array project on this site. The last piece of information I want to share with the commission is that as part of our submission, we did submit a report from Edward Pimentel, who has appeared before the commission on numerous occasions as a land use consultant. I apologize, he is tied up at a Warwick project being heard tonight in Warwick. He hopes to get here at some point, but he's not here yet. But his report is made part of the record and does speak to how this project is consistent with many, many provisions under the city's comprehensive plan, in particular, those new amendments that were made by the city council and the planning commission in the most recent past. So we'll talk a little bit more about that after. With that, Mr. Chairman, unless there's specific questions of me right now, I'd like to invite up Jenna Shea from Dupree Engineering, our project manager, and she will give a short presentation. Oh, before she does that, I apologize. Could I just pass out an important point that I didn't make was that prior to this project being proposed, this 2.4 acre site was developed. The Patuxent River Authority had leased the land to an entity or an individual who operated greenhouses on this site. There are some existing paths that you can see in the aerial photo that was on Greg's report, but I brought with me see the prior use and development on the site. I want to note that most of the greenhouse structures, as they are depicted in those photos, have been removed. The concrete pads are still there, and the last photo in that set is another aerial photo which the Patuxent River Authority shared with me, very similar to the one that Greg had in his report. So you can see the limit of development previously on the site. We're not expanding it. We're utilizing that exact area. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask Jenna Shea to come forward.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. For the record, my name is Jenna Shea, S-H-E-A, and I'm a project manager at Dupree Engineering. We have an office located at 2 Stafford Court in Cranston, Rhode Island. And I am going to provide you a brief overview of the existing conditions of the site, and then I will walk you through the conceptual level of the plan. So the site is located at AP 13 lot 47, and as Mr. Murray mentioned, is zoned M2 General and Industry. The access to the site today is located off of Ross Simmons Drive, which is located off of Ross Simmons Drive, which has an existing access road coming off of the cul-de-sac of that property and running through our parcel to the National Grid parcel AP 13 lot 44 that contains their substation. If you could pull up sheet 4, that would be very helpful. Thank you. So as you can see on the site plan, just to provide some context of the location of the project site, you can see on these plans that we're located on the border of Cranston and Warwick. So the city of Warwick is located to the south and east of the property, and the Patuxent River runs along the eastern edge of the property. Directly adjacent to the Patuxent River, so if you cross east from the riverbed, the Warwick Sewer Authority is located in this area, and all of those parcels are zoned industrial as well. To the south of the project area is the parcel I was just speaking of. That includes the substation. So that will be AP 13 lot 44. And then to the west of the project area is industrial zone properties as well. And these properties include large paved parking areas for the Ross Simmons corporate office, and also the Tasca Collision Center is located in this area as well. I would like to note that there are no residential abutters in proximity of the project parcel that we're speaking of today. The entirety of the property is approximately 50 acres. And of this 50 acres, there are approximately 20 acres of wetlands on the site and approximately 30 acres of upland area. The upland area is the area that excludes the wetlands, but includes the buffers. A majority of the southern portion of the parcel consists of wetland areas, as you can see on this plan. All of the green areas on this plan are the wetland areas for your context. The wetlands that are located directly adjacent to the proposed disturbance area have been flagged by Natural Resource Services. And Mr. Scott Rabideau is here this evening to speak to the wetlands on the site after I complete my presentation this evening. The plans being presented today do not include a boundary survey at this time due to the conceptual level of the plans. But prior to development plan review submission, we will be completing and adding the boundary survey for this property. The topography on the site is relatively flat, and the stormwater in existing conditions will ultimately discharge to the Patuxent River located along the right edge of the disturbance area. So although the project property is approximately 50 acres, which is a larger property, only approximately 2.4 acres of this parcel will be used as the project area. So for the remaining portion of my presentation, I will call this 2.4 acre area the project area. The This project area has been previously cleared for the tenant that was located on this portion of the property. And as Mr. Murray mentioned, there were 2 greenhouses located on the property from this tenant. And these 2 greenhouses have since been removed, but the concrete pads are still located on the site. But as a part of the proposed development, these concrete pads will be removed. There is an existing easement for National Grid or Rhode Island Energy in order to access and maintain the substation that is located on AP 13 lot 44. This existing easement, as you can see on this plan, runs through our proposed development area and consists of an approximately 16 plus or minus gravel access road that they use to access this substation. There are also existing utility poles and overhead wires in this project area. As Mr. Murray mentioned, there is an ELUR on the property, which is an environmental land use restriction. This environmental land use restriction is contaminated groundwater that was found on the site previously. The proposed solar development does not prohibit any terms of the ELUR and will have no effect on the groundwater in this area. And then if you could go to the next sheet, please. So the sheet that you see on the screen is the proposed development. We are proposing a 0.4 megawatt AC solar development, and which is an allowed use within the M2 zone of this property. The project does not expect to request any waivers or variances for this project, and we will only disturb approximately 2.4 acres of the entire property. As you can see on this plan, the solar coverage is just a small area of the entire property. So this zone is allowed to have a maximum solar coverage of 85% of the property. The solar area, including the inter-row spacing as shown on the plans, is only approximately 1 acre of area. This would be about 2% of the total property and about 3.3% of the upland area of the property. In addition to the panels, we will be providing a 20-foot spacing between the panels and fence for maintenance and emergency access. And in addition to removing the greenhouse pads on the site, the applicant will be planting low growth, low maintenance grass below the solar panels. And all solar panels proposed on the site will comply with the setbacks as defined by the M2 zone. Since there's no residential zone surrounding the property, no additional screening or buffering is required for the project parcel. The access to the site will utilize the existing gravel paved access road, and the only proposed access that will be provided is potential improvements to this existing roadway. So there'll be no additional impervious area as a part of this application. No new lights, sewer, or water would be proposed as a part of this application. And the interconnection for this site, to the best of our knowledge at this time, will connect directly into the substation adjacent to the solar project area. A small portion of the solar area will be located within the FEMA flood zone AE special flood hazard area. Although we do have a small portion of the access road located within this flood area, there are no changes in grade or changes in cover proposed within this area, and all of the proposed development located within the flood zones are all previously disturbed from the past use of the property. Due to the conceptual level of the plans, all the FEMA lines shown on this plan are provided by RIGES and have not been analyzed or confirmed at this time. During the submission process with RIDEM, any work within the floodplain area will be reviewed and approved by RIDEM, and we will ensure through coordination with RIDEM that all panels will have no effect on the floodplain in the area as well. I would like to also note that a small portion of the existing access road is also located within the 200-foot jurisdictional wetland buffer. In the same regard as to the FEMA floodplain that I just discussed, we will not be disturbing any new areas within the buffers. Everything has been previously disturbed, and the only changes that are expected are improvements to the existing access road and proposed interconnection poles as necessary within the buffer area and previously disturbed areas. The project will be submitted to RIDEM, and we will coordinate with them to ensure we meet all environmental and stormwater standards applicable to this project. In addition to this RIDEM submission, I would like to note that our project is located within a natural heritage area, but due to the previously disturbed areas on the site and all of our proposed solar development being located within these areas, we do not believe that we will have any impact on the species of this property. And Mr. Rabideau can speak to that as well when he does his presentation. We are also located within the groundwater reservoir area, but as I had mentioned, we do not believe that solar will have any impact on the groundwater in this area. And at this time, I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Shea at this point? Okay, thank you, Ms. Shea.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, at this point, I'd like to invite up Mr. Scott Rabideau. Mr. Rabideau has testified as an expert on numerous occasions, or not only in Cranston, but around the state. He's clearly the premier respected wetlands biologist. His company has done work for multiple companies throughout the region, but he has worked with Revity Energy, understands the nature of their business and process, and the concept of solar arrays. And I would invite him up at this time. He has provided a screenshot there that the staff has assembled. We do have hard copies of those available, which I'll pass out, but he's going to refer to that mapping that he provided to us. With that, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Scott Rabideau.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. It's really good to see you all. Last time I was here was virtually during the COVID shutdown, so it's been quite some time since I've seen you. As Mr. Murray pointed out, my name is Scott Rabideau. I am certified as a professional wetland scientist by the Society of Wetland Scientists. I am the principal and the owner of Natural Resource Services, Inc. in beautiful downtown Harrisville, Rhode Island. I have had that company since 1988 and have worked on well over 10,000 wetland projects in the state of Rhode Island over the course of that 30 some odd years. So that's just a brief outline of my background and my qualifications. As I'm sure the commission members are aware, a year ago this month, our state wetland regulations changed significantly. In July of 2022, DEM promulgated new regulations based on a 2015 statute change. And it didn't change the way we delineate wetlands, but it changed how we classify wetlands, and it changed how we provide buffer zones to wetlands. And I'm going to try to explain that briefly. I don't know if you can go back to Plan 5 before we get to this one. I think it was Plan 5. In August of, that's the one, yes, thank you. In August of 2022, my staff delineated the wetlands on this site. You can see just to the north of the dark green area, little triangles, those represent the wetland flagging that we placed on the site. Under the new regulations, the state is cut up into 3 river regions. This project falls within the urban river region, and within the urban river region, you have specified buffer zones for all of the wetlands and for the rivers that exist within that region. In this instance, the Patuxent River has a 200-foot jurisdictional area. That is not a buffer zone. The jurisdictional area is the area upon which, if you are working within it, you need to get a permit from the DEM Freshwater Wetland Program. This portion of the Patuxent has only a 100-foot buffer zone. So there's a 200-foot jurisdictional area, but there's a 100-foot buffer zone associated with that. The wetland, which is the dark green, consists of primarily a forested wetland, but there's also an intermittent stream in there. Portions of that wetland will receive a 50-foot buffer zone, and portions will only receive a 25-foot buffer zone. For wetlands, the jurisdictional area is 100 linear feet. So in this case, any work within 100 linear feet of any of those flags requires a permit from DEM, but the buffer zone is maximized at 50 feet in that area. Obviously, as your planner stated, we're going to get a wetland verification after this process, should we be successful, and that'll all be codified by DEM through the verification process. The entirety of the solar array falls outside of the 200-foot jurisdictional area of the river and the 100-foot jurisdictional area of the freshwater wetland that was delineated on the property. The access to the site through the existing road does fall within the 200-foot jurisdictional area, and portions of it fall within 100 feet of the Patuxent River. This is where it gets a little more confusing. The new wetland regulations identify buffer zones. So in this case, the Patuxent River has a 100-foot buffer zone. But they differentiate within that buffer zone areas that are naturally vegetated and areas that are previously altered. So areas that are naturally vegetated are considered buffer. Areas that are previously altered are just altered areas within the buffer zone. In this instance, the access roadway has been there. My review of the aerial photographs, historic aerial photographs, first time the substation or the electrical station is seen is 1981. So that access road and that station has been there since at least 1981. So that road is not considered buffer, even though it falls within the buffer zone. And this whole explanation is leading to the fact that when we file for our DEM freshwater wetland permit, because we are not altering buffer within that area, we are not required to seek a variance under their new standards. So this application will be submitted not as a significant alteration, but as an application for a freshwater wetland permit with no variances. If you were familiar with the old rules, this would be analogous to a preliminary determination application with the potential to receive an insignificant wetland alteration permit. So I just wanted to lay that out because it is complicated, but that is what will happen subsequent to the master plan approval on this. I did want to point out, the issue of the roadway and screening vegetation to the buffer zone, and the fact that there is a National Grid or Rhode Island Energy power line that goes right through the property. If any screening vegetation were required by the DEM, it would not be for the solar facility because the road separates the solar panels from any of the jurisdictional area. There may be a requirement along a portion of the access road for some screening vegetation on the southeast side of that. But any screening vegetation would be low-growing evergreen shrubs because we'd be under the power lines and we'd be subject to any of the restrictions from Rhode Island Energy for that as well. So that would be the only instance where I can see screening vegetation required for this project from the wetland perspective. If you can go to the other graphic that I prepared. I wanted to do this for the commission, just to give you a flavor of how we look at wildlife and wetland habitats within these areas. This is titled the unfragmented habitat along the Patuxent River within the half-mile radius that the Dupree plan shows. So you've got about 2 miles, a little over 2 miles of river that flows within there. I love the pretty colors because it just shows you that there is a mosaic of different wetland types within this corridor. And that mosaic means we have better habitat from a wildlife perspective, right? It means if everything were green, it would be a homogeneous wetland and it would be valuable. When you have a mosaic, you have different wetland types. So we recognize the value of the adjacent areas. But the other thing we take into consideration when we're assessing wildlife habitat and looking at this from a permitting perspective is the juxtaposed habitat. Everything around it is urban. Our project is immediately adjacent to the urban area, and our project is separated from these habitat types by that existing road that has been in place since at least 1981. So when I finalize this and submit it to DEM, initially my preliminary opinion is that our project is not going to have a significant adverse impact on the wildlife habitat values of this riverine wetland system. But I did want to present to you the fact that it is pretty unique for an urban wetland to have, this much differentiation, of the habitat types that are available for wildlife there. So it is a really nice area. And I believe, unless you have any questions for me, that is all I would present to you this evening.
Any questions for Mr. Rabideau? In that case, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me just go back over a couple things. I want to specifically address the ordinance that's now in effect and our compliance with those conditions. When you look at 1724-020, I believe now, the new solar energy system ordinance, there's a series of criteria that must be followed by whether you're a major land development, a minor land development, an accessory, rooftop, canopy. The city council, with the assistance of the planning commission, outlined various criteria depending on the level of activity that we're involved with. I want to address some comments which I've had the benefit of seeing some comments that were shared by the public. But as I talk about the ordinance, I will try and address some of those comments that were made. First, there is no land involved with this project that is under a conservation easement for which development rights have been sold. Okay. We need to separate the entity, the Patuxent River Authority, their charge under law and their ownership of this property. There is no conservation easement and no land held in conservation by the Patuxent River Authority, at least as it relates to parcel 47. We will be subject to the building permit process, and that will be one that will be followed after development plan review, after preliminary approval, after final approval. One of the requirements of the ordinances, we have to comply with a limitation of 12 feet in height for the solar panels. That's a standard provision. We will comply with that. Jenna Shea talked a little bit about the solar lot coverage, which can be up to 85%. We will not exceed it. And in fact, we're so substantially below it that it's not even a question. In the M2 zone, there are certain setback requirements, front, rear, side setbacks. We will meet those requirements. The ordinance is very specific in the M1 and M2 zone for projects like this. There is no additional visual screening that will be required. We will have to have a fence. It will be an 8-foot fence as required, but the ordinance does not require any additional visual screening. But it goes on to say this. It talks about incompatible uses and residential uses, and in those cases, there can be a triggering event for additional screening. First, I don't think there's any question that there's no residential uses abutting this property. We are surrounded by industrial property to the east, to the west, specifically the Ross Simons Building and the Howard Industrial Park. Lot 44, the square on the site plan is, and as shown in the aerial photographs, is deeded to the National Grid or Rhode Island Energy as one of their substations. And so we're certainly not incompatible with that use. To our southwest, I believe, we have the landfill. And then across the river, we have the Warwick Sewage Treatment Plant. There is a suggestion that we are incompatible because of the wildlife activity on the property, adjoining the rest of the property on the opposite side of the gravel road. I respectfully suggest that we are not incompatible. First of all, the wildlife and plant habitat is not a use per se, as we define uses under our code. The wildlife and plant habitat is a natural condition. It is not an incompatible use, in my opinion. I spoke to the 8-foot fence requirement. We will be required through both the DEM submission and to the city of Cranston through the development plan review to submit, and Dupree Engineering will prepare in consultation with Scott Rabideau, a stormwater management and erosion control plan. That will be an absolute requirement both of the state and the city. I want to talk a little bit about the connection to the grid. This is probably the most convenient connection in the history of solar connections. The National Grid substation is across the driveway from us. And while we haven't fully designed the connection, we anticipate that there will be an easy connection that will not involve running miles of wire, or the phase 3 services needed is in the immediate vicinity. The ordinance talks about underground cables. I would suggest that between the ELUR, that the disturbances near the wetland, that probably is not the way to go, and I don't think it'll be necessary. But we have submitted a preliminary report from National Grid. That's part of our submission that indicates that there is ample host capacity available for this project. I just want to finish up with just a few more points. First, in your late yesterday, I believe you received a letter from Representative Joseph McNamara of the city of Warwick. He does represent a portion of Cranston in the Patuxent Village, Edgewood area. I don't believe his rep district falls within this property, but he has been a vocal, apparent vocal opponent and expressions of concern with the Patuxent River Authority. If you look at his letter, he talks about being opposed to this project because it diminishes public access to the Patuxent River Authority watershed. I'm not sure, I didn't have a chance to speak to Representative McNamara. I'm not sure he was totally familiar with the project or the plans, but I would respectfully suggest that in no ways does this project diminish public access to the watershed. And if he had concerns about previous approvals in the city of Warwick, I respect that, but I'm not sure the basis of his objection is relevant to this particular application. There is a suggestion that this property is within what's called the Howard Conservation Area. That does exist in name. I have discussed with the legal counsel and representatives of the Patuxent River Authority. There is no basis in law or existence of something called the Howard Conservation Area. Legal counsel for the authority tells me there is no legal document that exists creating it. And as best they can tell, it is a label that appears on city maps. But they are unaware of any records or instruments declaring it an area for conservation. And it is a label applied to this particular area of the Patuxent River Authority property, but it's in name only, and in fact, there is no legally existent restriction or condition on this property that would prohibit the consideration of this application. The planning staff talked a little bit about the fact that this project is going to generate some income for the Patuxent River Authority. Within their bylaws and authority and statutory creation, there is no prohibition for them to, yes, they are supported by the 5 communities that make up the Patuxent River Authority: Cranston, Warwick, Situate, West Warwick, and Coventry. And I believe they paid, those entities pay dues, but they previously receiving income from the greenhouse use that was on the property. And we have entered into an agreement that will provide them some level of rent going forward. That is not a reason to deny this application. There is no prohibition. And there was a suggestion that this is to address the apparent fiscal problems of the Patuxent River Authority. I'm not aware that they have apparent fiscal problems, but the opportunity for them to generate some income should be looked at as a positive to support the other activities that they undertake as a quasi-public corporation. Jenna did talk about the flood zone. There is, we're not disturbing the flood zone. We are confident that we can build this project on the site as we have shown, and the detail will come forward when we get to that stage. With that, Mr. Chairman, I have no other comments. I would reserve the opportunity to perhaps offer a closing remark if necessary. We'd be happy to answer any questions from the commission at this time. Thank you.
Any questions from members of the commission at this time? Commissioner Frias.
Councilor Murray, I thought you did a good job explaining a lot of the position of your party, and I find much of it very persuasive. One question I had, and it really gets to the question that came up in the public comment letter, and you tried to address it about the buffering requirement under the zoning. And I agree, there's no residential use anywhere next to this. I also agree, when to the west, it's a commercial industrial development. To the southeast, it's an electrical facility. So the only question is, to me, is the slight sliver of land between the road, the river, and then to the west of it, of course, is the sewer. So my question to you specifically, to the best of your knowledge, is this a place where anybody hikes? Like that particular area, is that a trail? Is it a scenic in any way? Or is it just a piece of land that's not developed?
I can't speak with specific knowledge that it is used as a hiking trail or a walking trail by anybody. I can tell you that as you drive down Ross Simons Drive and you get to the end of the city street or the pavement, the Ross Simons corporate headquarters and factory or building is to the right. There is a gate going across what becomes the gravel road, which I have gone there and the gate's been closed. I've gone there when it's been open. When I took those photographs, the greenhouse was still operating at the time. We were we knew where we were going, and so I went to capture what was there. You can see there's actually a gentleman with his truck still, I don't know, I think he was dismantling at that point. My point is, if the gate was closed that day, I would have been able to walk around it to get, I wouldn't have been able to drive my car through. The gate, I think, is there in relation to the National Grid substation that is at the end of the gravel road across from where the solar arrays are going. But I would have to defer to the Patuxent River Authority as to the level of use that area receives for walkers or, environmentalists or naturalists who are interested in the area. I don't think, the most important thing I would say is there's nothing being proposed here tonight for this solar array that would interfere with the ability of someone to continue doing what they've been doing, if they've been doing it. We are not, and you've heard this multiple times on multiple projects. Once installed, we are a low user of city services. We will, during the building permit process, we will have to provide a noise study to make certain we're in compliance with the city requirements. I don't think we're going to be disturbing any wildlife with the equipment, but there will be no reason why anyone, to the extent that the Patuxent River Authority, and I don't represent them, encourages, walking along their properties, along the stream. We're in a wetlands here. I don't want, this is not like you're walking along the pavilion at Scarborough Beach. This is a marsh, treed, and I do want to just make a point. I did discuss this with Jason, is in terms of the conditions of approval, obviously we have no problem with the DM permit. I just want to make clear, and Jason agrees, that in terms of the survey that we're going to do is going to be limited to the area of the project. We're not going to do a classroom survey of the entire 2 miles and 50 acres. I think everybody understands that, but I don't want to swear. My point is, there are ample opportunities along this property for people to enjoy the value, the beneficial value of the wildlife and the aesthetics of the property. And I don't believe our use will interfere or contradict that in any way.
Other questions, members of the commission at this point? Okay, thank you, Mr. Murray. Are there any members of the public present this evening who would like to be heard on this matter? Yes, please come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Heather Thibodeau. I live on 137 Blackmore Ave in Eden Park, Cranston. And I wanted to read a letter on behalf of the West Bay Land Trust, which I am the secretary for. I apologize that it's really very technical, but you guys probably know this stuff. So it says, "Dear Commissioners, the West Bay Land Trust submits the following comments on the application for the Sharp Drive solar proposal. The proposal is the first to be submitted under the new solar ordinance and involves land designated as open space on the future land use map. These facts raise several issues that the commission should consider, or we ask you to consider. It is imperative that we consider this application set the standard for future applications. First, the solar ordinance states, and this is in quotation marks, a copy of the preliminary interconnection feasibility study. See, this is what I mean, that's the technological language, from National Grid or the applicable utility company is required at the master plan stage. The study is defined as indicating the anticipated route and associated costs for interconnection of a solar energy system to the electric distribution system. And I know Mr. Murray spoke a little bit to this just now. But a copy of the pre-application report has been posted, but this report does not appear to meet the requirements of the ordinance. The report states that a cost estimate will be provided during the system impact study and does not indicate the anticipated route. Critically, and this is in quotation marks, this report shall not be used to infer the ability to interconnect any project to any of the existing Rhode Island energy facilities. Question: has the preliminary study been completed? If not, then the July 11 hearing is premature and should be continued or postponed until such time as the study is available for review by the commission and the public as required by the ordinance. Second, the proposal brings into sharp relief the conflict between zoning classifications and the comprehensive plan, which identified, and this is in quotation marks because this is in the comprehensive plan on page 46, 430 parcels of land which have been assigned a land use classification of open space are not appropriately zoned. So I think he's saying the implication here is that there's a question about this piece and how it's zoned. The plan recommended that for land that is not owned by the city and that is not already zoned open space, this land should only be zoned open space with the permission of the landowner. The question: have city officials and the Patuxent River Authority ever discussed changing the zoning from M1 to S1? If not, why not? The S1 designation should be the appropriate designation given the PRA's plans for the property, and this is in quotation marks. The authority has been steadily working to make this area a functional urban passive recreation facility as well as a wildlife refuge. That's in the annual report 2021 to 2022, page 6. Will the lease with Revite Energy Sharp Solar hinder the zoning change? The language in the notice of lease appears to do so. Quotation: the lease also grants to tenants certain access, utility, solar, and other easements over, under, and across all or a portion of the remaining landlord property. And 2, the premises, in each case as further described in the lease, unquotation mark. Under the lease, which has not been released, does the applicant have the right to expand the solar facility at a later date? Does this lease prevent the zoning change called for in the comprehensive plan for the life of the lease, potentially 40 years? I'm almost done. And then it says, how does this application meet or complement the following comprehensive plan goals? LUP-1.4, to preserve and enhance the quality of existing valuable resources, including wetlands, surface water, groundwater, wildlife habitats, and migration corridors, historic sites, scenic views, and unique cultural resources. 3 more. LUP-8.2, strengthen protection of open space corridors along major water bodies and wetlands by zoning them for open space. LUP-8.3, within 18 months of the plan's approval by the Rhode Island Department of Administration, bringing the zoning ordinance into conformity with the comprehensive plan by rezoning lands to make the zoning map consistent with the future land use map. And last but not least, thank you for sticking with me, OSP-1.1, acquire lands along the rivers to ensure access to and protection of these natural resources. Respectfully submitted on behalf of the West Bay Land Trust. Thank you so much for sitting.
Thank you very much. And we'll do all the questions and comments first, and then we'll ask the applicant if they would like to address any of them in case people have additional questions or similar questions. Anyone else present who would like to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir.
Steve Stikos, 37 Ferncrest Avenue in Cranston. I'm not here to support or oppose the project, but to ask the planning board, plan commission, to look at this proposal very carefully. I have a couple of concerns, one of which, the major one, is about the runoff at the site. And I'm sure that Mr. Murray will say that will be addressed by DEM. But we know that this same company, Revity, caused huge environmental damage, in part through erosion when the rainwater goes off the panels and creates runoff in their other projects. And DEM was not able to effectively prevent that from happening. So as part of the comprehensive plan, I would hope that this group, looking at the environmental provisions in the comprehensive plan, would get some idea of what's going to happen with the runoff from these panels. And the reason that I think that's especially important here is I know that general area was the site of a lot of hazardous waste. And we know that from the, I can't remember the initials, but the environmental restrictions on the land. And I do know that the Capuano landfill was there, and their famous auto fluff was a big issue there, where they would grind up automobiles, and there'll be all this plastic fluff that was very hazardous. So what I'm concerned about is that the water runs off the panels and then erodes the bank going into the river and takes those contaminants into the river and potentially opens up what the applicant says is, we're not going to disturb any groundwater. Well, if you have erosion, there's the potential for disturbing the groundwater and the runoff with whatever dreadful stuff is under the ground, getting into the Patuxent River and contaminating Narragansett Bay in addition. The other thing that I'd like to answer Mr. Frias's question about a trail or hiking on the site. And for years, I've been involved with a very informal group, Friends of the Patuxent, doing cleanups and trail work along the river. And we did at one point build a trail that ran from the very end of Pontiac Avenue up in the general area of where this project, along the banks of the river, and then came out in the general area of where this project is proposed for. I haven't been there in years, so I don't know the condition of it now, but I do know that on the Patuxent River Authority website, they talk about a trail. When we built it, frankly, it wasn't used very much, and there was dumping. I think Mr. Murray's talked about the gate, and we tried to work with the Economic Development Commission, and there continued to be dumping. So according to the PRA, there is a trail there, and I know at one time there was. Another point I wanted to make was that in the report from the planning department, it's stated about how this is going to be an economic benefit to the Patuxent River Authority. And I would say that that is not an appropriate comment for the planning department That's not how you should be making decisions about whether something is going to be a economic benefit or not to anybody. I know there are other people here who are concerned about subdivisions, and I certainly hope you're not considering economic benefits to whoever owns that land. So I would ask the Plan Commission, the Plan Department to refrain from extraneous comments about how some project is going to economically benefit someone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stichels. Other comments, questions from any members of the public who are here?
Good evening. Lynn Harrington, Taft Street in Cranston. I'm sorry if some of my comments duplicate what you've heard, but I'd like to read them in full. The first question that really needs to be addressed here is, why is the PRA, Patuxent River Authority, undertaking this effort in the first place? It has nothing to do with their stated mission to improve, preserve, and protect the Patuxent River. The authority provides recreational facilities along the river and is expressly authorized to provide for land and water conservation, construct and maintain hiking and biking trails, flood control and water pollution control facilities, preserve wetlands, construct dams, stream diversion, dikes, walls, and pumping stations. Nothing in here mentions that the PRA becomes a source of state revenues for an SES that is proposed for toxic lands that are currently in remediation. I am also surprised that the property being discussed was slated for rezoning some 5 years ago to S1 and has never been done. I don't know if this was an oversight, but I am venturing to guess that the M2 manufacturing designation is why this property is being considered instead of many other PRA properties. One of my other concerns is the scope of work of this project. As I tried for many hours to find any public solicitation or RFP regarding this project, there was no posting under the PRA's website, nor could I find anything on the State Division of Purchases website for an RFP or any other solicitation for this service. But there were many previous RFPs from the PRA for remediation, environmental, and wildlife protection efforts. Many other quasi-governmentals like RIAC and Quonset Development Corporation have current RFP issuances. So this project is slated to be 0.4 megawatts right now, but there are 40 more developable acres. Any guarantee that these won't be used for solar? The applicant's own narrative notes that a complete assessment of the area has not taken place. How do we know this won't turn into a much larger project along the shores of the Patuxent River? The panels are slated to be installed in an area with ongoing flooding issues. The 2010 100-year floods, when the Patuxent overflowed its banks everywhere along the river, is not that distant a memory. There needs to be a topographical map with contours and expected solar placement, panel placement detail offered for review. The maps that were included in the narrative were just not detailed enough. Will these panels be placed above the 100-year flood level? It looks like they all will not. How tall will the panels be if the current level is 12 feet? Is there enough room to get these panels out of the area? Will a graphic be provided showing the expected view from Sharp Drive in Pontiac at Night Drive and from Route 95 directly east of the project? While we say that there are no homes impacted by this, it may be other folks who are. And what level of digging or excavation is foreseen to install these panels? This is already a toxic area. Where will the soils go for the storage? And if they're toxic, what will replace them as required in the solar ordinance? PRA self-professes a lean organization with much of their labor volunteered. They also state that revenues from this project will go toward office space and the like. The project is very likely to result in revenues in the millions of dollars, but there is no project budget or detail available on the use of taxpayer dollars used for the SES's construction, or where the revenues from the operational SES will go. Will there be an opportunity for net metering for the city as host to this arrangement if it succeeds? This is a quasi-governmental agency, not a bank. Is a FOIA request needed to obtain this financial information? Can we access the feasibility study used to justify this project? While the file posted to the agenda today states that it is a copy of the feasibility study, it is actually an extract of the interconnection agreement between Southern Sky Renewables and the Rhode Island Energy Corporation. As the PRA is partially funded by contributions by the 5 cities and towns located on the river, I have not located receipt of Cranston's share. Has it been paid for the current year? If not, is it not needed by the PRA? This project is actually a very big deal and may just be the first shot across the bow in what is a unique riverine conservation area in a very sensitive flood-prone environment. While the project at hand is less than 3 acres in size, the potential for much larger development exists. The information provided to the commission so far is quite minimal. This project needs to be denied or continued until more information is received. There are too many unanswered questions and unknown terms to be approved at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrington. Any other members of the public present would like to be heard?
Douglas Doe, 178 Lippert Avenue. Just a quick procedural point, Mr. Chairman. I submitted the West Bay Land Trust comments to the planning department. They're posted to the website, but they're identified as my comments. I emailed the planning director this morning, asked them to correct the identification correctly. So it reads West Bay Land Trust comments. That has not been done. I just asked it to be done as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Doe. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I would ask if any of our online participants would like to be heard on this matter.
I see no public comment.
Okay, no public comment. Okay, in that case, I will entertain a motion that public comment be closed. Mr. Murray, did you want? Sure, yeah, okay, well, yeah, why don't, yeah, if you can address some of the issues that have been brought up, okay.
I assure you shouldn't close public comment until I speak, so.
Okay.
I don't want to go point by point. I just want to talk about a couple things. First, with respect to the feasibility study that was submitted, it's very clear that Rhode Island Energy has said, first of all, in their comments, they said the cost for the line extensions, reconductoring of radial feeders can approach or exceed $500,000 per mile, depending on the level of complexity. It says that the proposed site location is adjacent to the Pontiac substation, so multiple feeders are available to interconnect. Final determination would be done subsequent, but it identifies the feeders. It says feeders 53-27F1 and 53-27F2 have hosting capacities. Let there be no doubt among the commission that we will have the ability to connect to the grid. I don't know how you can sit here tonight with that question in doubt. You can reach over and touch the substation. We're satisfied that we will be able to do that, and I hope you are also. This whole financial discussion about the Patuxent River Authority, frankly, I'm not sure it's within the province of this commission to get involved in the financial status of the Patuxent River Authority. There is no prohibition to them leasing the land. They leased it to a greenhouse owner for many years that had, I suspect, fertilizer and other chemicals there. And nobody was around worried about the groundwater and the Patuxent River corridor. I'm disappointed in Mr. Stikos when he uses comments like this company has caused huge environmental damage. I take strong exception to that. That is so inappropriate, unfair, and unvalidated. We are subject, and we work with DEM throughout the state of Rhode Island, in Massachusetts with the environmental protection agencies there. If there are issues that need to be addressed, and we're all talking about Gold Medal Farm, a project of Revity Energy, when there were issues that came up with the wetlands biologists at DEM, they were addressed. There are no violations existing, and we're not perfect, and nobody else is that gets a DEM permit. But to use the statement, huge environmental damage, it's wrong, and it needs to be called out. This whole issue of runoff, we have a Department of Environmental Management to deal with those issues. I assure you, and I think you know, this application, whether through the efforts of Ms. Shea and Mr. Rabideau, is going to get strict scrutiny from the Department of Environmental Management. I have no doubt about that. And they will not issue a permit to us, that you will have an opportunity to review its terms and conditions at a later date. Ms. Harrington was talking about it. She didn't see any RFP. I don't believe the Patuxent River Authority is obligated to do any type of RFP. It became aware that this property was available potentially for lease. We had discussions with them, and ultimately the board of directors of the authority chose to enter into a lease agreement with us. There's nothing untoward about it. It's appropriate. It's within their authority. And finally, Mr. Chairman, I'm disappointed that people who have spent time and energy at public meetings in good faith coming and opposing when solar projects are clear cutting or cutting trees down. We have a pre-existing site that formerly had greenhouses on it. We have a small solar project, 0.4 megawatts. We have no plans to expand beyond this. But the fact of the matter is, if we ever thought of it, and if the Patuxent River Authority wanted to entertain it, we'd have to come back here with a whole new series of hearings and approvals. So, we are not, we are very comfortable this is under the Renewable Energy Growth Program of National Grid or Rhode Island Energy. It's designed for projects this size. We're not looking to come back later and make this a 5 megawatt project. It's going to be a 0.4 AC megawatt project. With that, I'd be happy to clarify any of my answers or comments. I thank you for your time. I sincerely hope that we take a step forward tonight under the new ordinance. A project that deserves favorable consideration should be undertaken here, and we will comply with the new ordinance and the requirements of the city council and the city to bring this project online. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. And at this time, I will accept a motion to close the public comment. Commissioner Zadelis moves and seconded by Commissioner Mancini. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Are there any further questions from members of the commission? Commissioner Thrias.
Is it okay if I make a comment now?
Certainly.
Okay. Because I'm inclined to we're gonna get to voting soon, so I'm anticipating voting for this. And I just want to explain it to the public who have come here why, because last month I didn't vote with Revity. But this month I will be. It's pretty simple for me in a couple of fronts. This is under the future land use map, open space. The land has been disturbed already. It was disturbed with a greenhouse. If this was not disturbed, I would not be supporting it because you would be disturbing open space. It's been disturbed, and so I don't see the problem with putting a solar facility here. Whatever is going on at Pawtucket River Authority is not in our jurisdiction. In regards to the other issue of the zoning, the screening issue, to the west, it's a commercial industrial area. To the southeast, it's an electrical facility, just like this is. I don't see the incompatibility. The only issue I would have would be potentially on the eastern sliver of land. I asked about whether or not this is an area that is basically a walking trail or hiking area of some kind. The comment I received from the public was that, well, at one time it may have been, at one time it was, it's not regularly now, may not much be now. I would be interested in possibly protecting that area if it was a scenic area, if it was going to be an area that has aesthetic value. But I'm not sensing that from the location of it on the map and where it is, and therefore I do not see a need particularly for screening on that side of the property. I'm open to hearing it at the preliminary plan stage, but right now that has not been shown to me. I doubt that people are walking along that riverbank next to the Warwick Sewer Authority and checking out that scenic vista with the National Grid to the Rhode Island Energy substation to the south and Ross Simon to the west. So I tend to be skeptical of that. So it looks like to me it consistent with the comprehensive plan because it's already been disturbed and it looks like it meets the zoning ordinance. So unless I hear something differently that persuades me from my colleagues, I plan to be voting in favor of this proposal tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Frias. Any further comment, members of the commission? Okay, seeing none, and we have our recommendation, Mr. Gurdon.
Yes, again, staff finds the proposal consistent with standards for required findings of fact set forth in Rhode Island general law, as well as with the city of Cranston subdivision and land development regulations. So staff therefore recommends that the Plan Commission adopt the findings of fact documented previously and approve the master plan submittal subject to the conditions denoted below. One, that the applicant shall obtain all necessary approvals from outside state agencies, including wetland edge verification from Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management prior to preliminary plan submission, and that the applicant must submit a Class 1 survey prior to development plan review preliminary plan submission.
Okay, at this time, I will accept a motion. Motion is made by Commissioner Zadelis, seconded by Commissioner Barbieri. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion passes.
Thank you.
We're going to reorder the agenda because I understand that there's quite a bit of interest in the item that's listed third. So we will now take up Gladstone School. There's a public hearing on a preliminary plan for major land development. Gladstone Elementary School.
So I'm sorry, Mr. So we're not skipping two, we're just moving 3 to 2 and then,
Right, yes.
okay, all right.
Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna do that. Oh, then you gotta recuse.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Michael Zalalia. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Cranston Public Schools Department to present the preliminary submission application for the Gladstone Elementary School. Here tonight, joining me is Ed Collins.
I just, are you, is that mic on? Because yeah, so,
I can talk into it.
yeah, there you go.
mostly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Outside voice. As I mentioned, Mr. Collins is here from Cranston Public Schools. Also joining me are Douglas Ostler, traffic engineer from my company, Commonwealth Engineers. Reagan Shields Ives, architect with Feingold Alexander, and Dustin Powell, Traverse Landscape Architecture. The project is located at 50 Gladstone Street, Plat 7-4, Lot 2357. It is 7.8 acres in area, zoned B1. The school is a permitted use in the zone. The existing school was constructed in the early 1950s. The earliest plans that we have are from 1951. And it has certainly done its service in that time. Current enrollment at the school is 550 students. And at this point, the school is no longer functionally, I would say it's functionally obsolete for its educational mission. And in a broader sense, relative to the overall goals of the school district, it needs to be replaced. And so the proposal currently is to increase the school enrollment from 550 students today to 800 students. There would be a demolition of the existing school building in its entirety. It will be a construction of a new 115,000 square foot, gross floor area building that will be 3-story exposure on the front side, which is the west side, and 5-story exposure on the back or the east side. The proposed location of the school does meet all of the applicable horizontal requirements as far as zoning setbacks as well as lot coverage. The proposed height of the school requires a zoning variance that we have received. We were here in February, received a positive recommendation from this commission, and we subsequently were granted the variance from the zoning board. Before I go any further about what we're going to build, I recognize and we recognize that there is some interest and concern about the elements of the project related to the demolition of the existing school. And so at this point, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Mr. Collins, who's going to speak briefly about that.
We will be following all, I can tell you that all safety and security protocol are either in place or will be in place before the site is touched. We have an approved abatement plan from Rhode Island Department of Health, which will address the removal of the asbestos material before the building is demolished or disassembled. We're in the process of getting back our permit from DEM, which will address water runoff, erosion, and dust control. And obviously, throughout the entire process of the job will be monitored by OSHA. So if people have specific questions about procedures and protocols and everything, we have plans. We have a dust control plan. We have an abatement plan. We have everything. Supposed to go through everything line item by line item. I can address anyone's questions or concerns, either now from the board or later from the public.
Okay, thank you. Certainly, Commissioner Frias.
Just try to make this quick for you. Traffic. Who's the, can I
Mike will
talk?
go over the traffic pattern that's
Okay.
going on there. Yep.
And is the stormwater person here or is not? Not here?
Mike will address that too.
Okay, thanks.
You all set? Thank you.
A great segue to the next topic on my outline, traffic. Commonwealth Engineers performed a traffic study of both the school site as well as the local neighborhood intersections around the area. Traffic counts were performed in February of 2022 during school session. And subsequently, traffic study, once we had developed the layout of the site, traffic analysis and study was done to assess the impacts of the new school, the new enrollment, and the new circulation pattern on the school will have on the school roads themselves, as well as the surrounding area. The results of the analysis indicate that majority of the intersections, level of service, LOS, which is basically the report card for how traffic works at a given intersection, will either be maintained or slightly improved. Particularly, anyone who's familiar with the area knows that the existing driveway entrance at that confluence of Lawrence, Gladstone, and the other intersecting street to the north is a bit of a rodeo at certain times of the day. And the road is actually closed by crossing guards during drop off and pickup times at that location. It creates for a very chaotic and ineffective traffic pattern. The proposed design does a few different things to try to remedy that situation. Firstly, we are putting on-site queuing for any of the non-bus drop-offs and pickups. There will be a dedicated drop-off zone capable of queuing at the zone itself, up to 4 cars at any time, but additional queuing will take place through what I call the mid parking lot and back down through that windy driveway that comes up from the existing driveway on the east side of the site. So we are providing a substantial amount of additional on-site queuing space so that when parents come to drop off or pick up, they're not parking or obstructing the local roadways adjacent to the school site. They'll be able to do so on the various driveways on the site. The other thing that we're doing is providing a separate dedicated bus drop-off pickup loop that comes in off of Lawrence Street. Buses will be able to come in from Lawrence, go around the loop, drop off, pick up, and then exit back onto Lawrence Street. That keeps the bus traffic separate from the vehicular traffic. On bus traffic, we'll be doing the same thing at the same time. We are maintaining the existing driveway that is on the east side of the site and goes between Asia Street and Gladstone. That driveway is going to provide access to our 2 on-site driveways, one for the lower parking lot and the other one for the access to the drop-off in the middle parking lot. So the combination of these things, as well as the addition of on-site parking, and I'll get to that next, is going to improve the conditions, the traffic conditions at the school, but also in the broader area of Laurel Hill Ave, Gladstone Street, Lawrence. The traffic analysis has been submitted to the city for development plan review. And so the city traffic engineer has or will be reviewing it. And if there are any comments, questions, concerns from them, obviously we will deal with them and address them accordingly. I can certainly entertain, if people want to jump in at the end of each section, I can entertain questions that way.
Sure. Commissioner Cooper.
If now would be the time, I would just like to ask if I remember correctly, Gladstone Street is now one way coming down the hill to Cranston Street on school days.
At certain hours on school days, yes. And
Is it the plan to keep that restriction in place?
as of right now, yes, it would be kept in place, and the possibility would exist, and I think this would be coordinated with the city to potentially expand that and convert that to be one way all the time. But we're not saying that definitively until we're able to coordinate more with the city traffic engineer.
So is the intention to send more of the traffic down to Cranston Street as opposed to being up on Laurel Hill Avenue?
From the site, people coming in could use Asia Street to get into the, so parents coming in to do what they do, come in up Asia Street, they use the existing driveway. They go into the queuing driveway. When they leave that, they reach Lawrence Street. There is no restriction on if they turn left or right onto Lawrence. So parents certainly could take a left and head west towards Laurel Hill Avenue. They could take a right and go down Gladstone Street. So we're not proposing any restriction on that. So I don't know if that addresses your question.
In part, yes. And then when you looked at the impact, did you consider the impact on intersections on Cranston Street as well as Laurel Hill and at
Yes.
the top of the
Yes,
neighborhood?
those intersections, Gladstone at Cranston Street, Asia at Cranston Street, were evaluated in the traffic study. There was those are already a little bit lower as far as the report card, the level of service. I believe the PM peak of Asia at Gladstone Street went from a D to an E, so it's a slight degradation. And that was one of only 2 locations where there was a slight decrease in level of service.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. So,
Okay, and unless there are any other questions, Commissioner Fryas.
Just on the traffic, first of all, I recognize the difficulty of increasing your trips per day by 45% and keeping all your LOS results pretty much the same post and after. There's one glaring exception, of course, to me, which is the Cranston Street Gladstone eastbound. It's gone from a D level already, which is not good, to an E level in the PM, which is worse. Is there anything, maybe what was already discussed earlier about the one-way situation, but is there anything that can be done to improve that from an E to higher?
to go, well, I'm going to soon turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Ostler, who's the traffic engineer. Before I do that, what I would say is, I think it's unlikely that we would improve the situation from a D to a C.
Yeah.
There may be the potential to maintain it at its
At
current
D.
state, because again, as you reference, we're not doing a 1-for-1. There's going to be an increase in the student population of the school. So the challenge really is,
Yeah, the challenge is when you basically combine 2 schools together in the same place, you're gonna have more traffic. And the fact that you're able to keep the traffic levels pretty much the same as they are now overall is a credit in the sense of what you've done, the traffic group has done. I'm just noticing in this one particular area, it's gotten worse. So I just wanted, I'll wait to hear what your traffic expert has to say and about what does it mean to be at E level as well?
sure.
Because as a parent who's, have to pick up his kids sometimes, I understand there's like waiting, but I just want to see what does that mean when it's E for this area? So, thanks.
So I'll turn it over to Doug. Bigger picture, as I mentioned earlier, we're in the process of, we're going to be coordinating with development plan review and the city traffic engineer. So I think that collectively between our professionals and the city professionals, if there is a solution that we can implement in the project, Cranston Public Schools would certainly entertain that. So I'm going to call Doug up and I'll be back.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Doug Osler. I was the principal traffic engineer that worked on the traffic study for the school. As a general idea, the level of service ratings are a range of delay that's when applied to intersections. In the case of level service D and level service E, the D range is between, if I recall correctly, 35 seconds to 55 seconds. Excuse me, it's 25 seconds to 35 seconds, and E is 35 seconds to 55 seconds. So there is a bit of a range in there. As far as how things can improve, it really is a determination of what is desired by the residents there. There are a couple things that could be done. For example, during most times of the day, it is a 2-way road. If, for example, it was to be changed to a 1-way road, I'm not necessarily saying it would be a good idea. There are pros and cons to different things that would need to be considered by the community. But as an example, if that was done, instead of 1 lane in each direction, there could now be a left turn lane and a separate right turn lane that could help reduce the total delay that occurs at that intersection. We are fortunate to be between 2 relatively closely spaced traffic signals. So that actually kind of helps with the face patterns of the traffic signal when it's red in a particular direction. It sometimes creates opportunities that aren't always there on a busy road like Cranston Street.
Commissioner Frias, taking,
So just understand it as, I'm not a traffic person. I read traffic studies, but I try to make the best sense of it I can. When you say 35 to 55 seconds at an intersection delay, that means I'm going in, I get into the intersection, I'm going to be stuck there on average about 35 to 55 seconds longer than usual. Is that what that means?
It would be 35 to 55 seconds within that range on average. Would be typical, not necessarily longer than usual, but that would be the total. Some people could be 60 seconds and other people could be 20 seconds.
And how long will that delay be? Is it like basically just during the peak 1 hour of when those kids are coming out of there? A half hour? I'm just curious.
Yes, the evaluations were focused on the busiest times of the day, which is heavily influenced by the school.
Right.
We found while we were there, it was generally like half an hour.
Half hour. Yeah.
The very worst time was about 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And like a 45-minute window, you didn't really notice too much. There were some earlier arrivers and some stragglers, but it wasn't as big of a issue.
If you made that street, you talked about making that street one way, would that take that level from an E to a D or from an E to a C, or you just don't know?
I wouldn't be able to say with complete certainty
Mhm.
at this point without running some evaluations, as it is dictated by some empirical formulas based on evaluations. What often happens is that the left turn might receive a little bit less delay because they don't have to wait for as many right turns, but the right turn movement would experience much shorter delay because they'd be able to bypass any left turns.
Okay, thank you.
I'll pass it back to Mike. Thank you.
If we're ready to move on from traffic, I can go on to parking and on-site circulation. I've touched on the on-site circulation a little bit already, so I don't want to be redundant about that. As far as parking is concerned, we are proposing to provide a total of 100 parking spaces on the site itself. That's in comparison to an existing total of 68 striped spaces for the current school. The projected staffing for the school is 113. By zoning, current zoning, one space for schools, one space is required for every 2 staff members, which is a ratio of 0.5 spaces per staff member. Providing 100 spaces for 113 staff members would be a ratio of 0.88, so appreciably higher than what is currently provided. The spaces will be distributed various locations on the site. We don't have one massive parking lot. We can't really have one massive parking lot, but we do have 16 spaces that would be available to staff members of the school for the parking lot adjacent to the existing playground on Lawrence Street. We'll have a total of 11 spaces adjacent to the bus loop. 4 would be for administrative personnel, and a total of 7 would be for guest parking, visitor parking. We have a total of 27 spaces in the middle parking lot, which is the one that has the drive-through, the queuing drive-through for the parent drop-off pickup. 26 lower spaces in the lower parking lot behind the school. And finally, a total of 20 parallel parking spaces that will be constructed adjacent to the existing eastern driveway. It comes up with a total of 100 parking spaces. Certainly could be thought perhaps that more is better. The reality is that in spite of the fact that the site is 7.8 acres, we do have a number of constraints if we want to accommodate more than just parking for every staff member as well as other people. A significant portion of the site is dedicated to, and I'll get to this after, but necessary utilities, stormwater management in particular. We are also providing a significant amount of outdoor playground space and learning space, as well as large athletic fields to the southwest side of the lot. So at this point, it would be a challenge to try to practically incorporate more on-site parking than what we're currently proposing. It may be possible, but something else would have to give. So we in the school department believe that we've struck a proper balance between those two somewhat competing interests.
Commissioner Frias.
With the, I missed it unfortunately, is when you said there were 68 parking spaces. How many is that per employee at Gladstone School right now?
Currently over 70.
So it's just slightly, almost 1-to-1. Okay. You're going to 100. How many are anticipated when you bring the Arlington employees over? Is it still going to be 1-to-1?
My understanding is 113 is the full build with both schools combined.
113, and you have 100 park spaces.
Correct.
Where do you anticipate these other people parking on the street? First come, first serve? Just curious.
It's I guess, one way to look at it, yes.
Okay.
Before I continue, does anyone else want to have any questions about on-site parking? Okay. The next item is stormwater management on the site. The school breaks topographically from northwest to southeast. There's a localized high point just off-site to the west. So it's not a very significant watershed area coming onto the site, but there is a small watershed area that comes onto the site. Presently, there is stormwater drainage. There are catch basins and pipes on the site of various locations that collect the water and route it down towards the existing driveway. And then the majority of it runs onto Asia Street. A significant portion of the runoff comes around the existing school to the south and runs down the very steep, very vegetated hill. And our analysis, supported by some anecdotal accounts of the area, indicate that heavy storms generate an appreciable uncontrolled flow of runoff down that side of the school. There is a small portion of watershed that ends up going north towards Gladstone Street. It's a fairly small portion. The high point on that driveway is roughly the break point for water going north versus water going south. There's presently no stormwater management of that runoff from the standpoint of treating it for water quality, cleaning it before it is discharged from the site. And that's not unusual for a school of this vintage. Stormwater management of that nature was not a consideration back in the 1950s. 2023 stormwater management is a consideration. The project falls under the jurisdiction of DEM through its RIPTES program because we're disturbing over an acre of land. And so we have submitted to DEM an application for RIPTES. And we have at this point received comments back from them that I'm just about done addressing. I spoke at length to the review engineer yesterday, and all of the comments that he had will be resolved. They were not terribly significant comments, mostly clarification of certain items. So I anticipate that we will have our RIPTES permit for stormwater management from DEM shortly. We do need to satisfy City of Cranston standards. And in this case, those standards actually exceed the DEM standards for what is in their parlance, a redevelopment project. City of Cranston requires us to mitigate flow rates leaving the site for all storms up to and including the 100-year event. What that means is when we get done, we can't shed more flow rate than is currently leaving the site for any analyzed storm. Our design, our stormwater management is fairly aggressive in that regard, recognizing the significance of the volumes and the flow rates leaving the site. Our stormwater management is going to knock the peak flow rates down appreciably for all analyzed storm events from current conditions. And it's also going to control it in a better way than simply having a big rush of water spilling down from the southeast corner of the site and onto Asia Street, and then maybe getting into the catch basins that are further down the hill. We are proposing to have a sand filter basin that will provide water quality treatment for all the stormwater runoff. That will be immediately adjacent to Detention Basin North, which is the large depressed area that is tucked in between the two new driveways and the existing driveway. Majority of the site runoff from the upper portion of the site is going to go down through that, be detained for a period of time and metered out slowly so that we can control the flow rate leaving. We have an additional detention basin south, would be adjacent to the lower parking lot. That too is going to provide flow rate mitigation. We are able to meet all of our water quality treatment standards with just the one sand filter to the north. And then the outflow from Detention Basin South will be connected directly to the existing storm drainage in Asia Street. We've analyzed and verified that the capacity of that system will be adequate to receive the lower flows that we're going to be generating from the site. As I mentioned before, the project's being reviewed by Technical Review DPR, and I anticipate that we'll be coordinating with the city engineer regarding any questions or concerns they might have about the stormwater management as well.
Commissioner Frias.
Very quickly, it sounds like you're in compliance with all the stormwater requirements. I only had a couple of questions is that on one of the pages here, it says you use the size to capture the stormwater catchment and conveyance structures are sized to capture and convey storms up to and including the 25-year event without surcharging. Why did you pick, let's say, 25 years and not a larger number? And the reason I asked that question is we're forecasted in the coming years, generations, to have more rain in this area than we, due to climate change and stronger, rainfalls at times. So I was wondering why you use 25 years and not a larger number.
25 years is currently the design standard prescribed by DEM. So your collection and conveyance has to meet that. When the report indicates that it will have capacity for 25, all that means is that if we have a heavier storm, there will be a period of time during the peak of that storm where you could expect to see water sitting at the catch basins, waiting to get down and go through the system. So that is a standard design parameter that we use, 25-year, and it meets both DEM and DEM and City of Cranston standards.
So it meets it's what I was gonna say. So use a 25-year because it's what's mandated of you of the current DEM standard and city requirement.
Yes, and the other thing that happens is that the size of the infrastructure necessary to convey a 100-year event without any surcharging becomes prohibitively large. You'd be looking at very significant pipe sizes, more so than you would want.
And would impact your ability to do other things on this small site, correct?
It could potentially do that. And the other thing too is that heavier storm than a 25-year event, a little bit of surcharging 2 or 3 inches for a short period of time over a catch basin is preferable to having it all ripped down through the big pipes.
Yeah.
Down to your detention basin where you have less control over the outflow.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next item. This is a bit of an extension of what Mr. Collins was talking about as far as on-site management of the project. Once the existing building is down, there's going to be a substantial construction effort to build the new school. For the duration of that, there will be a stormwater pollution prevention plan that will be applicable to the site. That is a document that is required by DEM. They review it in draft form because it can't be executed till we know who the contractor is. It is an exhaustive document that contains all the different things that any contractor on the site is going to have to do to ensure that the site is properly maintained from the standpoint of trash, sediment and erosion, maintaining it cleanly, sweeping periodically, dust control, dealing with concrete washouts. All of those things are spelled out in it's called SWIP is the acronym. The SWIP requires weekly inspections as a matter of course, as well as an inspection of the site after any rain event that generates more than 1/4 of an inch of rain. So it is pretty robust as far as the amount of oversight that will be required and implemented at the site to make sure that we are avoiding instances where a washout on the site takes place and adversely affects somebody downstream. That is, as I said, something that is required by DEM and also the city, and it will be in place for the project. I'll touch briefly on the landscape design. We are humble civil engineers, so we don't design landscape, leave it to landscape architects to do that. I will say that I mentioned earlier, the site is proposing 2 playgrounds, one on each side of the building, 2 outdoor learning areas. Those are to the front of the building, one on each side of the main entrance. Play field. There we go. Thank you. Play field in the southwest corner of the site and preservation of the existing playground area in the northwest corner of the site. So there will be ample opportunities for the children of the school to be able to go outside and get some recreational time in current standard for outdoor play space and learning areas. The site also includes a significant amount of landscaping, plantings, trees, bushes, shrubs that will be distributed throughout the site. And lastly, we are attempting to the extent that we can to preserve some of the existing on-site vegetation. There is a small corner in the northeast corner of the site where we're going to save the existing trees that are out there, keep them. We don't need the land for anything else. There's no reason to tear down trees, just it's an existing slope and it is going to be preserved. We do have Dustin Powell from Traverse Landscape Architects here tonight. And so if there are any more particular questions about the landscape design, certainly we'd be prepared to answer them for you. Everyone's looking at you, Steve. Okay. In that case, I will conclude with my presentation of the project, and certainly we are happy to Cranston Public Schools has been transparent as far as their question portal and answering questions for residents, interested parties. We're also happy to answer any kind of technical questions that people might have. And I also recognize that the order of approval is a little bit reversed. Normally, we would have gone to DPR already and come to you with some determination from them. We'll be meeting with them next week. So I recognize that any approval that the board might or the commission might render would be conditional, I assume, predicated on getting approval from DPR as well. And with that, I'm going to sit down and wait for any other questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Gordon, just run us through the highlights and the findings, I think, and we'll get to the recommendation.
Sure, I definitely won't belabor it. I'll just get right to the findings, as the applicant has done a very substantial job, and there was nothing really outstanding from city staff that needed to be pointed out that wasn't already said. So regarding the findings, the proposed redevelopment of the existing school is consistent with the comprehensive plan, future land use map designation of the parcel as governmental institutional, because this designation is suitable for the public school uses as being proposed. Significant cultural, historic, or natural features that contribute to the attractiveness of the community will not be unduly negatively impacted through this proposal. The project is in compliance with the municipality's zoning ordinance, having been granted relief for building height for variance for a schedule of intensity regulations on February 8th, 2023 by the Zoning Board of Review. Staff finds that there will be no significant and negative environmental impacts from the proposed development as shown on the plan. The proposed project does not incorporate a subdivision of land or any improvements that would create physical constraints to development such that future building would be impracticable. The design and location of building lots, utilities, drainage, and other improvements conform to local regulations for mitigation of flooding and soil erosion. And the property in question has adequate permanent physical access from both Lawrence Street and Gladstone Street, all being improved public roadways located directly around the subject parcel. So with that, staff finds that this proposal is consistent with the standards for required findings of fact set forth in Rhode Island general law, as with the City of Cranston subdivision and land development regulations. Staff therefore recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the documented finding of fact and approve the major land development preliminary plan application.
Thank you, Mr. Curtin. Now I'd like to open up the floor to any members of the public who have questions or would like to be heard on this matter. Just come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name's Steve Kelly. I'm a co-owner with my mother, Joan Kelly, who lives at 25 Ridge Street, which is approximately 500 feet southeast of the building. And my only one question I have, will there be any blasting? Does anybody know if any blasting is going to occur?
Well,
That's my only question I have. No. Okay.
There is going to be ledge removal in order to construct the new school for the lower levels. But Mr. Collins has just indicated that blasting will not be one of the mechanisms to remove that ledge. So it would be mechanical removal.
okay.
Good evening. My name is Erica Laros. I live on 498 Laurel Hill Avenue, which is about 2 blocks from the school. It's a concern. I just have a question about the demolition and the potential of disturbed wildlife from inside the building, meaning rodents being released into the neighborhood. We have had problems in the past when the brewery was knocked down and where the police station is today and across the street, where it created a very bad rodent problem in the neighborhood, which they've abated to some degree by using bait boxes and getting covered trash cans in the city. But it's just my question, is there any kind of consideration of once either preventative or post demolition of what's going to happen to the wildlife inside the building?
Okay, thank you.
So we've also awarded a pest contractor to the site. That'll happen prior to any abatement. We'll go in there and make sure there's nothing still living in there. So, yeah.
Okay.
I'm tired. Don't you guys order pizza or anything over here? But anyway, Jimmy Marinelli, I live on Brown Street. Now that is the street that comes off of Gladstone, which you guys are kind of aware of, which you didn't mention yet. But current plans now, the way things exist.
Sir?
Oh,
Could you, you want to direct all your comments to all these guys.
Oh, well, he's the man. Oh, okay.
Actually, he's not the man. These people are the men and women.
Okay, sorry, I'm not used to this scene. I'm an old dinosaur here. I read road maps and I talk on, I mean, I look up, I don't do computers or any of that stuff. So this is why I'm here. All right. I actually read the newspaper and all that good stuff. All right. So right now, what we got going on here is we got Gladstone one way during school hours. So everybody has to go up Heather Whipple and come down my street, which they do at usually excessive rates and it's sometimes, mostly, a lot of times excessive speeds. And we're not happy about that. But, and I can't even get out of my driveway in the morning when they want to come through. So my question is, how are we going to reroute this traffic? Now, he's talking about Asia Street, which is nice, but, and I don't think we should make Gladstone Street a permanent one-way because there's only two ways to get up the hill. So you're really forcing more traffic and more congestion on my street, which doesn't make anything easier. So my idea, which I hope you guys would like, seeing that you're having an entranceway on the lower end of Gladstone, okay? How about we put the do not enter sign up there so people can still come up Gladstone and go down Gladstone, and eliminate the parking in front of the laundromat so people can see when they come out of the intersection, because that's a big problem too. The nail salon, the laundromat, nobody can see because of the car, like 4 feet from the corner. The other thing is too, then do we relocate the four-way stop sign at Elwyn Street? Is Elwyn Street going to be a way the kids can come walking through and move it over to Lawrence Street? Is that a possibility as well? But I'm just not happy with the traffic that goes down my street right now. And my street's a mess. It hasn't been paved since December of '76. And if you're going to put buses on the street, which I know they're going to come through, even though everybody says they're going to take Lawrence, they're going to take Brown Street too. People are creatures of habit. That's the way they've always come down the street. And that's what they're going to do, drop their kids off. And what they're going to also do is they're going to find out it's congested in that little parking area, and they're going to drop them off on the street. They're going to drop them off at the ends of my street, and you still use my street because everybody goes to school at the same time. Have you ever gone out of a Patriots game when it's a close game or it's overtime? Everybody leaves at once. Everybody gets there at once. Everybody leaves at once when it comes to school. Now, there was also talk about redevelopment in the neighborhood, curbing, new streets. Is that project still in existence? Or is that just hearsay and rumors, or it's money run out for that project too? So there's a lot of things that go on with this. And I hope they realize that the site they were working on used to be a coal mine. So they're gonna have fun when they find out there's some holes in there somewhere along the line, because the school has settled a little bit too. But neither say nor there. But my big concern is the traffic on my street, which is getting worse. Yes, there is a police officer there the first day of school. At the end of the street, there are no police officers at that time, usually because they're at roll call. And I've asked them before, they say, hey, throw a cop over there, you know, like halfway down. So therefore, when they start zooming down the street, you know, you have a chance to make a few bucks. They're a roll call, so they don't do it. So, I mean, I'm a little bit, I like your school, but I also think that those 13 people, they already park on the road now, and they don't use the playground area as it is. So they're gonna be on the road too, and you have to try to get around those people because they're already there. Because the school kids, if they're a school teacher, they should be there before the students, and they're gonna be there before, you know, the students, and they're gonna be called, and Lawrence Street is awful small. And it's a lot of traffic for a small street. Any attempt to try to widen the street a little bit, so therefore it can accommodate traffic a little bit better. Gladstone, at least down towards the entrance to the backside of the school. You know, I'm trying to think ahead a little bit. Anybody else? You know, Steve, you like to say things. What are we doing?
You wait till discussion.
Okay. Buy this guy a beer. But anyway, help me out, boys. Help me out. Wow.
Oh, okay, thank you very much for your comments and your questions. Anyone else present like to be heard? Okay, is there anyone with us online who would like to be heard on this matter?
There is no public comment on Zoom.
Okay, no public comment from the internet. Okay, I will then, is there any additional response from the school department on traffic issues, traffic questions, any of the other matters that have been brought up? Okay, thank you. Okay, this time then I will entertain, yes, Commissioner Coop moves to close public comments, seconded by Commissioner Exter. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Any further questions, discussion from the commission? Commissioner Frias.
Thank you. I appreciate the public who made comment on this, and I appreciate the team at the school department who put this together. This is an extremely challenging thing to try to combine two schools and put it into one place, which is pretty small. Whether or not that the idea of combining these two schools and creating one large school in this area made sense is water under the bridge at this point. That was a school department decision. And we are looking at this as whether or not this preliminary plan makes sense with the idea that these two schools are going to be combined. With the idea that these two schools are going to be combined and put here, I do have a concern about how the traffic is worsening from a D level to an E level in a place that's already has some traffic issues. And of course, I'm concerned with the fact that there's inadequate parking for the school staff as it is. These are things that I believe can be addressed in some other ways, and the school department should try to figure out some creative ways to maybe try to address these things. Those two things alone are not sufficient for me to vote against this, but it is concerning to me hearing the public comment about this, and I hope that the schools with the city will try to think about what they can do to alleviate the issue on the traffic there of the D to the E situation at Cranston Street and Gladstone eastbound, and also the lack of adequate parking for all school staff. When you combine two schools together and put it in a small place, there's a lot that goes into it. You guys have done a good job of trying to address most of the issues, but there are still a few things left hanging, and I hope you address it to try to address the concerns of the public here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions, comments from the members of the commission? Yes, Commissioner Barberi.
Yes, I think just some experience in dealing with this, more of a comment. It's just that and being in schools, I will tell you that anytime you have a school in the start of the school year, there's going to be traffic issues until people get acclimated. Especially going to be in a new school that's going to kind of rejuvenate a whole neighborhood, to be honest with you. And I think you could also see with Cranston Public Schools, it's already been a proven commodity because they've already have two projects going with elementary schools, and they've done a fabulous job with traffic and being good neighbors, if you want to say. And as far as the parking is concerned, staff members, you have to understand that not all the staff members are going to be there all the time. There's some itinerants that will be coming and going. And obviously you have some absenteeism. So I think the parking eventually is going to be sufficient. And that'll also be figured out because the school department has also made kind of notations that they would look at that. So in my experiences in all the schools that I've dealt with, traffic will be figured out. It will eventually be worked out in the neighborhood. Yes, you have a big school and, neighbors live near a school. So, but overall, I think this project, if you take a really good look at it and what they've done with the other two projects in the other schools, it's really going to reinvigorate this whole neighborhood, especially in a school like Gladstone that is aging and falling down. And this is going to be a great thing for the community.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comment, questions? If not, we put the recommendation, staff recommendation up again on the screen. Okay, yeah, Mr. Reardon has presented the staff recommendation. But I did want to have that back on the screen. I will accept a motion. Commissioner Sedalis moves approval on the findings of fact and the major land development preliminary plan, seconded by Commissioner Coop. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, should we take a quick 3-minute, 5-minute break?
Yeah, I think this would be a good time to take a 3-minute break if we could.
How are you? Oh, yeah. You good? Yeah, I'm tired. My wife was DLC since 1977. Before we even met. Good interaction. I think, and probably works on Pine Gap. You live at the end of the bridge. Oh, you like what she does. Yeah. So, you know, I think she'll, I can see her going next year. Yeah, I'm just fine with the right. Yeah, but I mean, I work with those two. Oh, yeah. Long. Yeah, what's 18? First point, yeah. She went to pop. Yeah. 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 Right. But I'm saying like, again, when he works out, so no. So I live over in the Baltimore City. One of the guys that passed away last year, Joe. Yeah. Yeah, Joe. Yeah, interesting guy. He's the chief of hey, you know, I think of anything. Everybody has it. Oh, that's the summit deal there. Summit. Yeah, just what that. And then. I see, Benny. Yeah, a couple of days ago, funny hotel. I drove the hotel on the water. I drove to Mayor. Yeah, the outside, like it only works 75 days a year. Yeah. He works like a Monday, like. Even if they were wanting to day afternoon, so after we got one that they have everything. Well, he was kind of retired in first, you know, he actually worked a part-time. But he
The entire neighborhood. They, 1 o'clock this morning, getting at this car. And he was driving around. Next time you talk to him, he said, you know, why? Yeah, well, yeah, I'll talk to him. But he was. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, a lot of guys. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's another guy I broke in the car, but he's got it. Yeah, I don't like friends. Yeah, I'm not there yet. I know. Oh, no, outside. There's no space in the condo. Oh, there it is. No. Funny thing is. Person back. Yeah. All right. I'm the Dale, sorry. I'm the Dale, I used to sit outside. Doesn't make mistakes. There's a well-established track record with me. Give the stenographer a break. He has. Participation, I didn't know this was coming up. Participation in these meetings from remote, I can see streaming. Is that gonna be a problem, or only with a major land development when we have a stenographer? Like, how's a stenographer gonna wear someone? How? They do. You know, the towns. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you know, I've been here, online. Even those some that put the video. Yeah. Raise their hand, even those that don't. Okay. I was just, that be an issue for zoning, and they're not here? Oh. I can't. Only tomorrow. We're back on.
Okay. At this time, we will resume the meeting. The next item on the agenda is, will be, it is under subdivisions and land developments, a preliminary plan for Summit Estates LLC, public informational hearing. Just in terms of having staff going back and forth and.
So the project title is Summit Estates. It's a minor subdivision without street extension, and it is a preliminary plan. The location is on Summit Drive, AP 16 lots 449 and 459. The zone is A8, single-family dwellings on 8,000 square foot lots. Future land use map designation is single-family residential. In summary of the project is that the property owner is proposing to combine and subdivide 2 conforming lots into 4 conforming lots in an A8 zone. The total area of the 2 existing lots is 36,609 square feet. The proposed subdivision is allowed by right per city zoning ordinance and is consistent with the future land use map. Here is a map showing the zoning of the parcels in red, and the surrounding parcels in the area, predominantly A8 with some C2, B2, and C4. This is a map depicting the future land use, showing that the subject parcels are slated for single-family residential with 7.26 to 3.64 units per acre, which is another predominant designation for many of the parcels in the area, along with multifamily, some open space, and some highway commercial services as well. Here's an aerial view of the subject lot. It's currently entirely wooded. There's no existing structures or otherwise on the parcels at current. Excuse me. Here's just a street view of at the corner of Summit Drive. Here's just a site plan snippet showing the general layout of the parcels, the approximate location of the proposed structures and driveways. So here's some analysis. The subject parcel is located in the northeast corner of the Glen Woods neighborhood. The surrounding neighborhood is comprised of mostly A8 zone parcels with some multifamily and highway commercial services and multifamily parcels as well. The project is free of wetlands and outside of any regulated floodplains or historical cultural districts. The units per acre calculation for this proposal yields 4.76 units per acre, which meets the density prescribed by the comprehensive plan future land use map. The proposed parcels all meet the required area, frontage, and total lot coverage as prescribed by the zoning code. A table depicting those totals for each parcel was provided in the applicant's project narrative. Staff is of the view that this application is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood and existing zoning and have no general concerns regarding the subdivision. Our findings are as such. The proposal is consistent with the future land use map, in which the area is designated for single-family residential use. The new single-family lots are consistent with the land use and density prescribed by the comprehensive plan future land use map allocation of single-family residential 7.26 to 3.64 units per acre. Significant cultural, historic, or natural features that contribute to the attractiveness of the community have not been identified on site. The proposal is in compliance with all zoning standards and will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of the Cranston zoning code. The site for the new single-family development is clear of wetlands, steep slopes, forest, or other elements of environmental concern. No negative environmental impacts are anticipated. The proposed subdivision will not result in the creation of individual lots with such physical constraints to development that building on those lots according to pertinent regulations and building standards would be impracticable. And the existing lot has adequate permanent access on Summit Drive and Glenview Drive, both public roadways within the city of Cranston. Staff's recommendation is that this proposal is consistent with the standards for required findings of fact set forth in Rhode Island general law, as well as with the city of Cranston subdivision and land development regulations. Staff therefore recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the documented finding of fact and approve the preliminary plan application subject to the conditions denoted below. That the applicant shall adhere to the conditions as outlined in the letter of sewer availability by the Department of Public Works and Veolia Water with respect to sewer construction and maintenance.
Hey, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Jeff Caffrey. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Resnick and Caffrey, 300 Centerville Road in Warwick. I'm here on behalf of your applicant, Summit Estates LLC. Mr. Wilbur, the principal of whom is in the audience with me this evening. There's not much I can add to what Mr. Girton has already stated, namely that it is basically a 4-lot minor subdivision. We have 2 existing lots that we're seeking to subdivide to create 4 single-family homes. All of the resulting lots will meet the zoning requirements for the area, ranging from anywhere from 8,265 square feet to 9,579 square feet. The lots will have sufficient frontage, and based upon our initial plans, everything will meet the required setbacks for the area. There's available sewer. There's available water to the lots. If you look at the plan, you will see that there is an easement that goes through lot 459. That was an easement to the Providence Water Supply Board. We have negotiated with the Water Supply Board and they've agreed that they're going to abandon that easement. And the pipe is going to be removed from the land. So ultimately, that easement will no longer exist as it has not been used by Providence Water Supply Board for several years. So once again, the resulting lots are all going to be in compliance with the zoning ordinance. And having said that, I really have nothing further to add. So happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for the applicant from members of the commission?
Jeff, I just have one question. So on the final plan, will that easement be removed? In other words, will that be removed on the final plan?
Yes, it will. At the time that they submitted this, we were still in negotiations, but that will be removed.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions? Commission members? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does any member of the public here wish to be heard on this matter? Just please come up, state your name and your address for the record.
Celeste O'Connell, that's spelled with an apostrophe, 400 Neshantucket Valley Parkway. Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. This is the first time I've ever attended a meeting of the zoning board, and it has been an education. It seems that you have already decided that it is perfectly fine and within the rules for this developer to squeeze 4 McMansions into a parcel designated for 2. When the signs went up advertising lots for sale, it said 2 lots. This is Western Cranston, okay? It's not Garden City. It's not 1950. We're not building 900 square foot ranch houses on postage stamp lots. I'm sure these are not affordable houses. They have already almost removed every tree from the plot. I can see it every day from my front yard. That plot has been untouched for over 40 years. I don't know if the developer has ever spent 1 hour at the intersection of Dean Parkway and Neshantaket Valley Parkway, but I can tell you it is no place to raise a family. Fire, ambulance, police at full tilt, day and night. That is a shortcut. You step off the curb, you're taking your life in your hands. The only person who benefits from putting 4 houses on a lot for 2 is the developer, not the neighbors and not the potential homeowners. I am opposed. I am a taxpayer. I have lived in Cranston for at least 33 years. I think there is too much overdevelopment, and it looks like the zoning is there to be vacated and to receive a variance. The developer knew when he purchased this property that it was 2 lots. And apparently that isn't enough. So now he wants your permission to make it 4. Please do the right thing. Okay?
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else here wish to comment on this matter? Anybody who is with us online have any comments or questions that they would like to make on this matter?
There's no public comment online.
No public comment online. Okay. In that case, I'll accept. Yes.
I live in the neighborhood, not in the 400-foot area, but outside of that. And I noticed that they're already digging the foundation. The foundation supports are on the piece of land. So if this wasn't to be approved as a 4-unit subdivide of the 2 units, of the 2 areas, the area that's been excavated already, is that going to be filled in and moved over so it's centered on the property?
I can certainly address that. The applicant was entitled to build at least 1 residence on the property because the lot in and of itself meets all of the zoning requirements. The proposal is to subdivide those lots to create 2 additional lots, but if for whatever reason the board was to deny the relief, then he would still have the ability to develop that piece of property, and he would still meet all of the setback requirements based upon where the foundation is located. Sure.
Okay, other questions, members of the commission? Okay. I'll accept a motion. I should have done this before. I accept a motion to close public comment at this point. Seeing there's no further comment. Motion made by Commissioner Exter, seconded by Commissioner Matus. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we have closed public comment. Any other questions on the proposal itself? Commissioner Frias.
Just a question to our solicitor. Is this a by right?
Well, by right has different meanings to different people, doesn't it?
It sure does. Just curious as to,
I don't believe, to my knowledge, there is not the need for any zoning variances. Is that correct? Yes.
there's no zoning variance. So basically, so I understand this, it meets the density requirement of the comprehensive plan. And secondly, because there's enough land there for 4
The
lots,
frontage, width, area, lot
with
area.
everything under the A8, it meets all the requirements of zoning.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And just for the record, Jim, your client's not going to your knowledge, isn't asking for any variances regarding the structures. They're all within the setbacks, et cetera.
Okay, other questions? If not. Okay, we have staff recommendation. I just wanted to have it put back up on the screen for people to view. And I will accept a motion.
Chairman, I'll make the motion to accept the findings set forth by the staff and the recommendation.
Commissioner Coop moves to accept the findings set by the staff and also the staff recommendation. Seconded by Commissioner Matus. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, Commissioner Mancini is recorded as voting nay, and the other members present vote aye, so the motion passes. Thank you. Next item, last one under subdivisions and land developments. This is a public informational hearing for a preliminary plan called Lanes End Minor Subdivision Without Street Extension. Ms. Lavalley.
This is a minor subdivision without street extension preliminary plan application. The applicant proposes to subdivide a 1.2 acre parcel into 2 conforming buildable house lots designated as Assessor's Plat 18, Lot 1759. The subject parcel is located at 0 Eva Lane. The parcel contains 51,242 plus or minus square feet, 1.2 plus or minus acres. The parcel is zoned A8, single family dwellings on lots of minimum areas of 8,000 square feet. Also, I just want to mention the comprehensive plan future land use map designated this lot and the surrounding area for single family residential 7.26 to 3.64 units per acre. The proposed use single family residential is consistent with the comprehensive plan, though the proposed density at 0.59 units per acre falls below the future land use map minimum density designation of 3.64 units per acre. The low density designation is due to existing development obstacles such as easements on the property, which I will show in the following slides. So as you can see, the parcels outlined in the teal blue. This is zoning map. Future land use map. Again, zoned for single family residential. An aerial view of the parcel. Close-up aerial view of the parcel. Street view of 0 Eva Lane. And just another angle of a street view of Eva Lane. Snippet of the site plan. Also, all of these are again in the memo. So for staff findings, the proposed subdivision is mostly consistent, as I mentioned, with the City of Cranston Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map. Again, the density designation is less dense than the FLUMS designation of the subject parcel as single family residential 7.26 to 3.64 units per acre. I just want to note that a majority of the lots within the surrounding neighborhood exclusively zoned single family have similarly low density designations. The lot directly abutting AP 18-1759, lot 18-1759 has a density designation of 0.92 units per acre. The proposal is in compliance with all zoning standards and will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of the Cranston zoning code. And the proposed subdivision will not result in the creation of individual lots with such physical constraints to development that building on those lots according to pertinent regulations and building standards would be impracticable. The design and location of building lots, utilities, drainage, and other improvements will conform to local regulations of mitigation of flooding and soil erosion. And also the subject parcel has no wetlands and all newly proposed lots are outside of any regulated floodplains, natural heritage sites, or historic cultural districts. So The first two are as mentioned. Finally, staff finds this proposal to be consistent with comprehensive land use goal 9 to protect and stabilize existing residential neighborhoods, specifically land use principle 9.3, to preserve the existing density of established neighborhoods. The average density of all the lots on the same side of the street as the subject parcel is 2.75 units per acre. The proposed density, 0.59 units per acre, does not exceed the average density of the street nor the maximum density designated by the future land use map. Due to the finding that the application is generally consistent with the comprehensive plan and due to the finding that the application will not negatively impact the general character of their surrounding area, staff recommends the Plan Commission provide a positive recommendation on this application.
Okay, thank you. Does the wish to be heard on this matter?
Good evening again, Robert Murray, for the applicant, Lakeview Development. Just want to note, Mr. David Clarkson, the principal of Lakeview Development, is here with us this evening, as well as Mr. Walter Skrupski, the professional land surveyor who prepared the plan that's before you. Amelia covered this. Does not need to be complicated by me. The only thing I want to note, in addition to what she said, the property can be serviced by public water, and we've had an analysis of the soils done that it can be supported with a septic system. So both lots will conform to zoning and would be in character with the existing lots on Eva Lane generally. So be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Murray at this time, members of the commission? Okay, thank you, Mr. Murray. Does anyone here wish to be heard on this matter? Is anyone part of the online participants who wish to be heard on this matter?
See no public comment online.
No public comment. Okay. I will then accept a motion to close public comment. Motion made by Commissioner Zadalis, seconded by Commissioner Mancini. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Public comment is closed. Any further questions from members of the commission? If not, I'll accept a recommendation. Motion made by Commissioner Frias to accept staff findings and the recommendation, and seconded by Commissioner Barbieri. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion passes unanimously. I just want to mention that that concludes the subdivisions and land developments, and now we move to zoning board of review recommendations. But the first item, the Amir Jurabachi and Pamela Jurabachi single family dwelling. After staff review, it was determined that no variance is necessary for this proposal, so it is withdrawn and the commission will not be hearing it. Okay, next item, zoning board of review, Cranston Street Associates and Colbea Enterprises have applied to the board to construct a new fuel station, mini mart with drive-through coffee shop exceeding the allowable height and signage relief. Ms. LaValle.
Thank you. This is a dimensional variance request by Colbea Enterprises at 777 Cranston Street. I know the applicant has a team here, so I won't belabor this, but I'll just go through a quick summary. The parcel is zoned special C5, heavy business industry with conditions. See ordinance 92201 and 92202, comprehensive plan amendment and change of zone, as noted in the memorandum for this application. The future land use map designates the parcel for highway commercial services. And in summary, the applicant requests dimensional variances in relation to total area of wall monument signs, maximum height of a monument sign, total signage area, maximum building height, and total number of freestanding signs. This is the parcel on the zoning map. This is also known as the trolley barn site for anyone unfamiliar. Former trolley barn site. This is the parcel on the future land use map. an aerial view, 3D aerial view, street view. This is also another street view from Cranston Street. Proposed site layout, proposed renderings and building elevations. So the applicant proposes to construct a new 5,000 square foot convenience store with co-brand coffee shop and drive-through, gasoline fuel dispensers, and electric vehicle charging stations. The relief mentioned previously for signage. Again, the parcel is located in a special C5 zone, heavy business industry with conditions. The proposed uses for the premises as a gasoline filling station with convenience store, inclusive of a coffee shop, cafe, and drive-through, is permitted by right in the C5 zoning district in accordance with chapter 17-20030 of the ordinances. Staff finds this use is complementary to heavy industrial commercial uses within the vicinity, as the property is located in the main commercial corridor of Cranston Street, surrounded by other gasoline service stations. Staff also finds that with freestanding monument and wall signs commonly found for businesses on Cranston Street, the proposed relief from sign height and total area would not be out of character or injurious to the area and are not inconsistent with the general highway commercial character of Cranston Street. Again, relief is outlined in the first bullet. Staff finds the request to be reasonable based on the existing conditions, the commercial character of Cranston Street, and the nature of the request. The denial of the request does not appear to serve any other policy or goal of the comprehensive plan, so staff finds the request is not inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. Finally, staff finds that the request for dimensional relief for monument and wall signs, as well as building height and total signage area, are consistent. I think that was a mistake. I don't believe they're asking for relief from building height. Are consistent with the highway commercial, heavily trafficked area of a main commercial corridor such as Cranston Street. Staff finds the request would neither be injurious nor out of character with the surrounding area, as a majority of the surrounding parcels within a 400-foot radius are designated for industrial or commercial uses. With this, staff recommends the Plan Commission forward a positive recommendation on this application to the Zoning Board of Review.
Good evening, Chairman Smith, members of the Plan Commission, Attorney Danielle Dufault on behalf of the applicant, Colvia Enterprises LLC, with the firm Adler, Pollock and Sheehan, 49 Bellevue Ave, Newport, Rhode Island. This proposal, as the staff report reflects, is in connection with the proposed development of a portion of the property formerly known as the Trolley Barn site. The applicant has entered into a lease agreement with the owner, Cranston Street Associates LLC, in connection with the proposed development. Just by way of introduction with us tonight, from Colby Enterprises, we have Michael Gazdaco, the Director of Construction, with us. We also have Colbia's in-house counsel, James Hall. From Dupreet Engineering, we have Ms. Cheryl Guglielmo, Principal and Senior Project Manager. And from Adler, Pollock and Sheehan, besides myself, we have my colleague, David Webster. So just by way of background, I think the staff report was very thorough. I will confirm that we are seeking a variance for building height, small as it may be. It is still a requested variance. We agree and appreciate the staff report and positive recommendation. As far as the actual staff report, I just had two small, and we agree and would request that the Plan Commission accept the staff report and their findings. Just two small corrections in the actual staff report. Regarding the total area of the monument sign, where 45 square feet is allowed, the applicant is requesting 86.2 square feet. We are requesting a variance of 41.2 square feet. And it was probably just a typo there. And then there was one typo, and we apologize, in our project narrative regarding the maximum height of the monument sign, where 4 feet is allowed. our requested sign measures at 7.63 feet. We transpose the numbers to 7.36 feet. So the variance request would be for relief of 3.63 feet. Other than that, as stated, we appreciate the recommendation of staff and agree with the findings. I would like to bring up Cheryl Guglielmo from Dupree to give a brief presentation about what's proposed as far as signage and the building height at the location.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I feel like we all need to do a stretch and like get some energy. I know it's past my bedtime. Cheryl Guglielmo, I'm principal at Dupree Engineering, also senior project manager for the Colbia projects. I just picked the mic. Sorry about that. If we could switch to the overall site plan, we are requesting, building height relief and signage, but I think it'd be very helpful for you to understand the context of how the signage fits into the proposal. So this is AP 7, Block 2, Lot 1. This site is about 6.61 acres. The premises that Colbia is leasing is outlined in blue at the center of your screen. That area is about an acre. The C5 zoning in this area, the minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet. For sites that have drive-in uses, it bumps it up to 40,000 square foot minimum. Just for context, Cranston Street is at the bottom of the page here. And we are identified as building pad site number 3. If we could switch to sheet 2 of 2, I had it as PDF page 3. It's the blown up version of the proposed site layout. If you don't have it on this, you could just zoom in to the blue area and that would be sufficient. So for context, starting at that inside of the blue line there, we have that 5,000 square foot Seasons Corner Market building in that gray hatch. Excuse me, that will include a coffee shop with walk-in and drive-through service. We have head-in parking at the front of the store. Excuse me. And then parking at the left side of the site, 8 parking spaces. The right side of the property, we have 7 spaces. We have 4 electric vehicle charging stations. You can see them. They have the symbol in the middle of those parking spaces on the right-hand side. One of the variances that we are requesting is for the sign that identifies where the charging stations are located, and we'll get to that shortly. In front of the building, in between the parking spaces, you can see the fuel canopy with the 6 pump islands and space for 12 vehicle fueling positions. If you're familiar with the previously approved plans, this was a reduction in the total number of pumps here. And then as far as the drive-through lane, you can see it wrapping around the building. The entrance is on the right-hand side, wraps around the back, and comes out towards the front of the site. The menu board for that drive-through use is located at the rear of the building. It's in the red where you can see that first car stacking there. That's also one of the variances that we're requesting. Freestanding sign is how the menu board is classified. We're allowed 1, and we're proposing the menu board as well as that electric vehicle charging sign. The pickup window is on the left side of the building, just for some context. If we could switch to the front elevation. So we were here, I believe it was in February, for the Plainfield Pike project. So this is almost like pretty much identical to what you saw previously. So this is the front elevation of a typical Seasons Corner Market. You have the modern mix of materials on the front of the facade. The height of this building to the ridge is actually 28 feet, 7¼ inches. So we're below the maximum height requirement, but the decorative cupola on the top of the building is actually 36 feet, 2½ inches. So that is where that relief comes from. It's not actually the overall building. in most municipalities, these are exempt from the max height requirement, but we've requested the variance, in this case for that cupola, similar to Plainfield Pike. While this plan is up, I'd like to draw your attention to the signage on this, the front of the building. You have the Seasons channel letters on those wood grain panels on the left side. That's identifying the convenience store use. And then to the right of that, there's acrylic letters identifying Corner Market for the convenience store. And on the right side, it's just that white box right now until there's a tenant in that space. That is for the coffee shop use. If you could switch to the signage plan. If everyone has it in their packet, I could go walk through it on paper.
Yeah, all the members received electronically, so. Yeah, and they
Okay,
can, I mean,
so-
some people are on their computers now, so. I don't think,
Do you want me to proceed or?
I don't think, yeah, I think you can
Okay.
proceed because the people in the audience are just you guys. So no one really needs to see it. Just-
I always bring boards just in case. We never need them. So starting at the left side of the page. Just move this out of the way. You can see that we have the fuel canopy. Actually, let me back up a minute. So one of the variances that we're requesting here. Yep. Perfect. You just zoom into that. So we're requesting a variance for total signage. The max for this area is 284.2 square feet, and we're at 311.8 square feet. So we're requesting 27.7 square feet. So I'd like to, even though some of these don't have specific size variances, I'd like to just walk through each of them because of the total signage. So on the top left side, you can see the fuel canopy. There'll be a Shell pectin symbolizing the Shell branding for the fuel on 3 sides of that canopy, one facing Cranston Street and then one on either side to the left and the right. The next, if you go to the upper right side of that sheet, we're proposing a monument sign. It's a small monument sign. It's the same on each side. And we're requesting a variance for the square footage of that, as well as the height. The proposed height of that is 7.6 feet total. That sign has a decorative base to it with a stone veneer. So the sign itself is not actually all of that 7 feet. And the reason for this sign is there was a pylon that was approved as part of the overall trolley barn project, but it never included gas prices. And even though a gas station was previously contemplated, there was no place to put those prices. So we have, as opposed to the larger pylon, our main ID sign that we had proposed on Plainfield Pike, we're looking for a place to display those gas prices and the Shell branded fuel along that busy Cranston Street. And so that monument sign on the right side is going to be placed, if you look at the plan view, it's proposed in the bottom right corner of that site. And just for reference, the trolley barn sign is off to the left side of that page. Moving to the next line for the Seasons Corner Market, we are requesting a variance for the square footage of that sign. There's a max of 30 square feet. And that sign is 85 square feet, so we're requesting relief of 55 square feet. And then we have the two freestanding signs for the menu board and for that electric vehicle charging station identification sign. We're allowed one per street frontage, and we're requesting two for the premises. I think I'm going to conclude there, Ms. Dufault. Danielle, I'll hand it back to you. And if I've missed anything, please ask and I will.
Thank you, Cheryl. No, I think that with Ms. Guglielmo's explanation combined with the staff report, I think that gives us hopefully gives the Plan Commission a full picture of what's proposed at which, thank you, this was perfect timing, at what is a vacant lot, I believe has sat that way. I believe the first application to start this whole process was filed back in September of 2021. And I know the city is very looking forward to some development there and utilization of that parcel. I just wanted to point out a couple of small additional notes, as Ms. Guglielmo pointed out in her presentation of this proposal of the monument sign for the gas pricing designation for the gas use at Building 3 on this site, as I'm sure the Plan Commission knows and has a lot of history with this project, is for 4 businesses that will be proposed at the parcel. So having the ability to have that gas pricing sign is important. The busy Cranston Street has a total of 624 feet of frontage, when typically in this zone you would need only 200 feet of frontage for a sign, as a parcel standing alone. So the request is not unreasonable due to both the frontage and the need for gas pricing sign. I'd like to also note that while as mentioned by Ms. Guglielmo, in this zoning district, the minimum lot area is typically 10,000 square feet. But when you add in a drive-through use to one of your uses, which are allowed by right here, it bumps you up to needing 40,000 square feet, specifically to the drive-through use. What is not contemplated in the ordinances is the companion addition of a sign for that drive-through use. Because typically for these drive-throughs, drive-in, fast food restaurant of most kinds, you would need a menu board to explain and for your customers and the public to order from. So that is the menu board is one of the freestanding signs that we needed to request relief for. And the other, as Ms. Guglielmo mentioned, was for to be able to direct the public and customers to the 4 EV charging station parking spaces, was for the other freestanding sign. So with that, I'd like to conclude, if the Plan Commission would so accept the staff report as requested with those 2 minor amendments, and we request a positive recommendation from the Plan Commission. If there's any questions, we're available to answer them.
Any questions from the commission? Commissioner
Hi.
Mancini.
Thank you. Wondering about the exit, how are we going to be coming across from Garfield across Cranston Street into the property?
Sure, I'm going to stay in my lawyer lane, and I'm gonna bring up the engineer to answer your question.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Wondering how you're gonna come down Garfield Avenue across Cranston Street into the property?
That is a great question. That was something that was previously contemplated as part of the original approvals. So if I understand you correctly, you're asking from Garfield, how do you access the site? I believe there's a light at that intersection. I was not the engineer for that project. Deprete Engineering did the engineering for that. And there was a traffic engineer, but I believe that intersection is aligned with Garfield Avenue. We have not changed anything as part of that. There was actually a gas station contemplated previously. All we've done, we've come in and put the Seasons prototype on top of that. So no changes to anything along that frontage. That is all as previously approved.
Oh, I had a couple of questions. I think I missed some of the finer points. What approximately is the frontage just in front of the Seasons and the gas station area?
I believe that is about 200. Do we have that? Pull that exact dimension.
We don't have a precise measurement of that. I think, right, so if just looking at the proposed site plan there, and the pad site, if you will, dedicated to building 3. I think knowing that the whole frontage of the lot, which the configured lot, I know it's gone through many iterations, is 624. It looks to be at least 200, plus or minus. The pad site to the right on your screen maybe looks a little under, and the pad to the left maybe a little over 200, and it's approximate. As Ms. Guglielmo testified, so neither the applicant nor, well, our firm nor Ms. Guglielmo was part of the major land development and the subsequent special zone designation for this parcel. So it's a little difficult to speak to the parcel in general. But what we do know is the building 3 pad site is a little over an acre of land, well in excess of what is required for the drive-in use, the bump up to the 40,000 square feet as mentioned, and complies with all necessary setbacks that are required under the ordinances.
How many monument signs is in the proposal just on the Cranston Street frontage?
1 monument sign.
It'd be 1 monument sign. Okay. And how tall will that be?
That's the 7.63, so
Okay.
a little over 7.6 feet. And as Ms. Guglielmo pointed out, the actual sign face area is not contemplated in the height of that. It's on a stone base, grounded at ground level, measured per the ordinances.
And that will be the one that will have the fuel prices on it.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Yep. Answered all my questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any members of the public wish to be heard on this matter? Any members of who are online right now wish to be heard on this matter?
There is no public comment.
No public comment. Okay. I'll accept a motion that public comment be closed.
Can I just follow up on a question about the traffic?
We can still question, but this is just the public comment that we're going to close.
I'll make a motion to,
Motion made by Commissioner Coop, seconded by Commissioner Matus to close public comment. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Public comment is closed. Now, floor is still open for comment from commissioner members.
yeah, I understand the traffic engineer is not here, and I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot, but I guess I'm going to. Just to make sure I am understanding this correct. One of the entrances / exits of this is lining up with Garfield Ave, and there are no changes to the signal out there?
So I appreciate your question, Commissioner Matus. It is our understanding that it is aligned with the Garfield Ave light, and as Ms. Guglielmo testified, she was not the engineer that worked on the original approvals for these plans, but what we can tell the commission is that this project, through major land development, full vetting again, maybe vetting again by the planning department, and the layout of the site as proposed with the driveways where they are currently located, and as each part, like pad, each 1, 2, and 3, AutoZone, building 3, where the gas station was a gas station, now our gas station was originally contemplated, nothing that was vetted by planning department during the major land development process, or the city council during its contemplation of this new designated C5 with conditions, has changed since that time. So it's our understanding that the driveways, the light signals, and any traffic memorandum or testimony that was required to approve this project with these 4 distinct uses had already been fully vetted by the city, the necessary city departments.
Yeah, so I'll step in on that. So when the major land development came forward, they had the traffic engineers, and I think it went from bad traffic to less bad traffic. In other words, sorry to be inarticulate about that, but it went from like a C to a B. And the delay, it's on file with the city. But it was found that the development, in addition to the lining up the lights with Garfield, striping, et cetera, didn't exacerbate the traffic over there. It didn't help it, and there was no adverse traffic impact over there based upon the experts that testified at the time of the C5, at the time of the approval of the overall site. And certainly that's on file with the city. I know you're gonna see this probably at DPW or whatever, that's on, so you might want to look at that. But it was vetted by this commission at that time, understanding that traffic in that area, it's not, it's not good coming off of Route 10 and all that, so. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Hi, I'm Michael Gazdaco.
And I know we're talking about signs and not traffic, so, but.
So I'm the director of construction for
Yep.
Colbia, and I've had a lot of contact with the developer, our landlord. Again, we're only a lessee of the small parcel in between the 2 curb cuts.
Yep.
We are not changing any ingress or egress from Cranston Street or Garfield Street. Whatever was approved is what is being built by the developer. We're just responsible for our pad in the middle. Having said that, I've been a party to conversations with First Hartford, the developer for the site, and I'm under the impression that they were required to make traffic signaling.
Traffic signal, yeah, there was like the signaling changes,
Yes, so
timing, I
believe
called
they
it
are
timing changes,
incorporating
yeah.
signal changes. Again, I can't speak for the landlord or the developer, but I'm fairly certain they're aware of their responsibilities there, and they are implementing traffic signal improvements to that.
That answers my question. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Just going from a 3-way intersection to a 4-way intersection is a bit confusing, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, other commit. Well, I'll accept them. I'll accept a motion at this time.
That makes about 14 of us at least.
Does anyone remember that, or was it just me?
I'd like to I appreciate that this is not the one that you could go all night for.
Okay, does anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the staff recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Coop, seconded by Commissioner Mancini to accept staff recommendation and forward a positive recommendation to the zoning board of review.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
should we make it clear that we're making the recommendation with the two modifications as made by the applicant?
yes, yes.
I was awake for that.
Yes, as modified, yes, by the applicant. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion passes.
Thank you very much for your time.
And I just want you to know, I rarely vote yes on additional signage, but I'm convinced that in this case, it's justified.
Thank you, Chair.
Yep, planning director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first update is on the comprehensive plan. So last month, we had one respondent for the comp plan. That was Weston and Sampson. We had our selection committee meet and we chose Weston and Sampson to be our comp plan consultant. We are finalizing the contract. At this point, I need to get some additional information that's required for the commerce grant so that we can work through that that process. At this point, staff turnover, we've talked about this. As you know, Doug has left to go to Coventry. Alex is joining him in Coventry. So Alex, this is his last meeting tonight. So this is a farewell to Alex. He's been a good addition to the department, and I think we wish him well with his old friend Doug. A search for planner tech is underway right now. So we have actually selected the replacement for principal. That's not public just yet, but I think we'll have something to announce very shortly. And I think that individual will be able to start at the very end of the month, just prior to our next meeting, which is right around the corner. I believe it's August 1st. And what was the final thing? Oh, I put this on everyone's desk. This is a breakdown of the legislative session that was prepared by statewide planning. And we will be working on this for the next few months. Be working on updates to the subdivision and land development regulations. We'll be doing that in-house. Steve will be helping us out with the zoning aspects. There's quite a few zoning changes. And there's quite a few process changes in the state laws. We'll be having to update the checklists, things like that. And at least two of the applications tonight under the new scheme from the state law would be administrative subdivisions. The one, Summit Drive would have been administrative, and so would the Lanes End. Those would both be administrative subdivisions at this point. Big change in terms of how we've done things in the past, and there's quite a bit of that in this this packet. So, take a look. We all have to start digesting all of these changes, but we'll need to get these together, probably October-ish, so that we can start putting the ordinances together and workshops and everything else to get these in front of the council by December, which I think is doable. But so that's all I have for tonight. We will see you all the August meeting.
Okay, just before we adjourn, I just wanted to add my own appreciation to Alex Berardo for the wonderful work that he's done for for the city, and for the city planning office, and for all of us. We will miss him, but we do wish him well in his new pursuits. And it's always wonderful to see somebody move on in their careers, and we wish him well. And I'm going to lead applause for him. And now at this time, I will accept a motion for adjournment. Motion to adjourn, Commissioner Zadella, seconded by Commissioner Matus. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.